Well,
We're hitting that button. We're
hitting
going
the button. We're
live.
going live. We're doing it live. We're doing it live.
Eraserhead.
Fuck
I hardly knew her.
it.
You want me to erase her
Eraserhead.
head?
Boy, I sure hope there's some head.
Are we live? Are we?
It says we are.
Oh, there it is. We're live. Ba-da. And we're live on the internet. What a time to be alive. What a time to be alive. How you doing today, Hugh?
I'm doing A-okay, Jamie. I'm doing A-okay. I finished both of these movies this morning. That was made for an interesting wake up.
I can imagine. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna get Lynchian today, boys. I hope you're ready. Hope you're ready to go deep into the collective subconscious or something like that.
Yeah,
Look at that.
Something.
We already have a super chat. How very exciting. Small Hill, thank you very much. As I saw Eraserhead for the first time last week. What the heck was even that? Good question.
Yeah,
a question that we will hopefully go some ways to answering today. What the heck was even that? It's the most pertinent question.
I think that's going to be for both of these movies. Yeah, I was going to say I think that's what we're probably going to primarily dive into is what in the heck is he doing over there? This silly goose, David.
The Thing says Slavoj Žižek of all people wrote a book about hidden meanings in Lynch. Oh, about hidden meanings Lynch put in Lost Highway. Lynch refused the interview with him because he had no idea what he was talking about. Well, yeah, that's very on theme for David Lynch. As you can see from the meme on the stream, he was not a fan of explaining himself. And you know what? More power to him.
Yeah,
I appreciate that about him. It's one of my, favorite little things about him is that he's like, you know what? No, I'm not going to explain it. Believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual film.
Elaborate on that. No.
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 No, thank you.
I
will be
sure
doing no
will not.
Thing. Not sure if you saw the film Twitter discussion about what movies are canon, and Lynch is an interesting example. Today considered one of the best ever, but 15 years ago he did not have the reputation. Do you mean canon in terms of like the canon of, best Western or like modern American films? Or are you talking about his canon? Because I don't, none of them share a universe or anything, so I don't know how that would apply to him. But yeah, he definitely has some movies that are iconic and usually in the sort of like cult film fan sphere of things. He's got some mainstream name recognition. I don't know how many normal people have seen anything of his beyond Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, in the 90s, Twin Peaks was maybe one of the biggest events, like television things of the decade, you could say. I mean, even though it only lasted 2 seasons, that first season people really dug on that, I mean, the whole cast ended up on SNL doing parodies and everything. It was a big deal.
It was a phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenon. That's for sure. So let's talk a little bit about David Lynch and our familiarity with his stuff in general before we jump into these two movies. I've seen maybe most of David Lynch's films, like his theatrically released films now, after seeing Lost Highway. I'd seen Eraserhead before. I'd seen Blue Velvet, which I love Blue Velvet. I still think that's his best work. I'm quite a big fan of seasons 1 and 2 of Twin Peaks, up there for his best work as well. And Mulholland Drive has grown on me quite a bit, especially after our stream that we did on it a few months back, whenever that was. I think I gained a new appreciation for what was happening in it on a rewatch, and it's up there for me now in terms of his best work. I still have not seen Wild at Heart or The Elephant Man. Those are two that I definitely want to get around to at some point.
The Elephant Man may be his most critically acclaimed. That's the one that, like, apart maybe from Mulholland Drive, because I know that was nominated for a bunch of Oscars. But I know The Elephant Man was the one that kind of really launched him into
because this Eraserhead was a cult classic. All the weirdos liked it, but
weirdos like Stanley Kubrick. Yes.
That's an interesting thing about that is that, like, David Lynch has talked about how Kubrick quite liked Eraserhead and showed it to a bunch of studio execs before he was working on The Shining. He's like, "Hey, come over and watch my favorite new film," and they watched it, and he made them watch Eraserhead. Which, part of me, knowing Stanley Kubrick, seems like he kind of wanted to subject them to it. Yeah. To be like, "Ah, what do you think of this?"
Yeah,
but hey, look at that
accounts, well, there are similar themes really at work there, right? Like I think between Eraserhead and The Shining, fatherhood plays a big role, obviously.
Sure. Yeah, I think Stanley Kubrick. You can definitely tell people have made some of these comparisons and things. He draws from there's some kind of out there and niche films that he likes to reference, like in A Clockwork Orange, for example. It's like he liked Eraserhead a lot, but he never made anything as abstract and strange. Like The Shining, sure, has a lot of weird stuff in it, but it's very straightforward. Like there's an obvious, like, literal story happening. Whereas, so he never got as weird as David Lynch. I think he liked that about him. I think he liked that he was willing to just go balls to the wall with it, if you will. But yeah, so I had not seen Lost Highway until we were planning on covering Eraserhead today. And I was like, you know what? Just in case we only have so much to say about Eraserhead, let's talk about Lost Highway too. That'll be a good excuse to watch it. So I've only seen Lost Highway once. That was last night before today's stream. And I think I understood some of it.
This was my second watch of Lost Highway ever, and so things started to fall back into place for me as the movie went along.
I was definitely lost, pun intended, while I was watching it.
Yeah.
About halfway through, I'm like, "Where did Bill Pullman go? Is what?" What
happened to Bill? Where is Bill? What happened to Bill? This is kind of funny. Like on theme for this. So an Instagram reel came across my my feed today, and I wanted to share it with you. It says. The caption is, "How I feel when I start to get bored 30 minutes into a film people call a 10 out of 10. And it's like a sketch of a crying ogre, right? A cartoon crying ogre. It says, "Everyone call Ogre stupid, and it's true. Ogre barely even literate. Ogre finally finished reading Ulysses, but Ogre only can identify surface-level themes like religion and nationalism, and can't comprehend deeper ideas like the remorse of consciousness that make James Joyce's novel a modernist classic. Ogre so dumb it make Ogre sad. At this rate, Ogre will never understand Finnegan's Wake." and I thought that was interesting, given
I see the connection.
It came up after watching 2 David Lynch movies, but I went to check the comments, and one of the most liked ones was, "This is me every time I try to watch Pulp Fiction." And
what? What?
I was not aware. Yeah, Pulp Fiction. I wasn't aware that so many people were like laboring under the idea that Pulp Fiction is some kind of intellectual exercise that requires deeper analysis.
It's interesting. It's like David Lynch's movies, with the exception of The Straight Story, very. I guess if there's a spectrum, right, to David Lynch, from very simple literal stories that are easy to follow that might have some weirdness to them. Like A Straight Story is pretty much as normal as a David Lynch movie can be. And then we have like Eraserhead. I think it's fair to say that's his most surreal and abstract. But what's interesting about him is that he's not like. What I like about David Lynch's films, even when I don't understand them, is that they don't feel pretentious in the slightest to me. They just feel like he's doing some weird stuff. Like, he doesn't even want you to intellectualize them. Yeah. He doesn't even like talking about them. He's just like, I don't know, you just feel it, man. Like, that's his kind of approach to this sort of thing.
Yeah, well, he trained as a painter, right? That. So, like, that's kind of his vibe. Is like, I'm just going to make art, and you can look at the art and interpret that art as you see fit. Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those for sure. So today we're going to try and make sense of Eraserhead and Lost Highway. I think I'm going to struggle the most with Lost Highway, mostly because I've only seen it once, and it's a bit strange in terms of what literally happens. And I'm sorry to see that there is no chat on the screen. Chat, that means you've not behaved. That means you've been very naughty indeed.
I've been trying, man. I've tried so many times to get chat on the screen, but I think they're just not living according to the laws of Dominic Toretto.
I don't know what it is. It just seems to be up to OBS and YouTube.
Yeah. Well, we've been in favor with the gods for quite some time, so it was inevitable that we would fall. Yeah, the mythological structure and all that.
Mm-hmm. Topaz, dude. So when I'm describing Lost Highway and Eraserhead as kind of like hard to grasp, it's more so in what actually literally happens, less so in like in general what themes are happening. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of obvious what it's about thematically both times, I would say. But Lost Highway is a bit more of a like, okay, but like what is actually happening in this story? Is anything actually happening? That's the other question. So today we're going to play a little game of Whose Dream Is It Anyway? The show where everything is made up and the plot doesn't matter. Talking, of course, about Eraserhead and Lost Highway, I think it only fair to start with Eraserhead since that was his first feature film. Came out in 1977, starring Jack Nance, credited as John Nance. But before we talk about any of the specifics of Eraserhead, quick shout out to Jack Nance, who's amazing, and I love
incredible.
him.
And both of these shows up in both of these movies. A nice little.
Well, yes, because I was about to mention that Lost Highway was his last film.
Yes, that's true.
Because he died before it came out, unfortunately. So this is a Jack Nance appreciation stream. You're a legend.
Yeah.
I love him in this movie. Like in Eraserhead specifically, Jack Nance is playing, or I should say, doing an impression of David Lynch. I think like all good David Lynch movie protagonists, the main actor is impersonating David Lynch. I feel like this is probably this and Blue Velvet especially, I would say. Yeah. Anyway, Jack Nance is great in this movie. So Eraserhead is a nightmare.
Yes.
It is a what?
A nightmare of
hour
fatherhood.
And 29-minute
an
nightmare.
hour and about an hour and a half, right? Like one of his shorter movies too, right? Apart from his shorts that he had put together for Netflix, the one with the monkey and all that.
He's done, dude. I found out today that he's made like 60 short films over his career. He's made a ton, and he made a quite a few in the last like 10 years or so. So I haven't seen most of them. I've seen a couple. I've seen The Alphabet. That's one of his. I think that's the first thing he ever did. But he's done so many short films. But one of the ones I have seen is, I think it came out in like 2020, was the like What Did Jack Do one with the talking monkey being interrogated by David Lynch himself, and he's like "Tutataban" and all that sort of stuff. That won't make any sense if you haven't seen it, but it's an experience. What did Jack do? Anywho, Eraserhead, yes, is a an hour and 29-minute nightmare. When I first watched it, I was kind of hoping that there would be like some scenes that were nightmarish and dream sequence like, and that there'd be some scenes that were normal, so you could kind of like grab onto those, like a buoy in the open ocean. But there's nothing. Basically, everything in this movie it plays out like it's a dream, an awkward, tense, stressful nightmare the entire time. I would say that I appreciate Eraserhead more than I actually like it. How do you feel about Eraserhead?
Yeah, I mean, Eraserhead's always been the one for me that's like maybe the most difficult for me to engage with on a enjoyment kind of level. I really like the themes of it all. I like how there's some kind of coherent little narrative somewhere in there, right? It's pretty simple, and there's a lot of strange surrealist symbolism at work. But more than anything, I kind of just appreciate the way that you can really see how good he is at using film as a medium to translate these sort of symbolic themes into a visual, right? Like he's really good at that. But other than that, the narrative is a little I mean, practically non-existent, if you want to say that. Like it's a little bit,
Just about,
yeah,
non-existent. I find that like, so this is the second time I've seen it, and I appreciate what it's going for a bit more on a second watch, which is, standard for me with David Lynch movies. But I do think it's kind of a chore to sit through. Um, I would say,
I
especially after the actual literal Eraserhead sequence, that feels like it could be like a punchline, like an ending to the movie almost. And then it goes back, and then it kind of drags its feet for a bit, and then it finally ends. I like there's definitely a section in there where I'm like, I don't feel like we're accomplishing much. It's stressful, it's uncomfortable, it's gross, it's funny in parts, pretty consistently funny. Like the laughs are spread out,
yeah,
but it's mostly awkward, kind of like what the hell am I watching laughs. Um, Not quite funny enough to be a comedy, but there's definitely humor in it. Like the literal Eraserhead sequence does feel kind of like a punchline. Um, but overall, the experience of watching it is like, yeah, I don't know if I'll watch that again anytime soon. It's a little bit of it's uncomfortable and not in a particularly entertaining
yeah.
way
I
for
can
me. I don't
understand
know.
that for
In
sure.
terms
Yeah,
of like just base entertainment level, I find myself kind of tired of the movie by
I had a
by the
difficult.
time
So
it's
we turned
over.
it on last night, and I had a very difficult time staying awake. Particularly with like we had 10 minutes to go, and I was just kind of like, we gotta finish this in the morning. Like this is not working for me right now. Um,
Yeah. Yep.
but I do really appreciate like the film. He says it's like his most spiritual movie, right? And then refuses to elaborate. But I think like knowing his own like biography, it kind of helps with that a little bit. So like he's made this at a time when he was relatively new to being a father, and his daughter was born with a physical deformity. She had badly club feet, and they had to go through some
Hmm.
pretty intense surgeries to get that fixed. And you can kind of feel that, right, like from him, and that this is a deeply personal kind of movie, like a personal nightmare of his. And I think that's one of the reasons why Stanley Kubrick, latched onto it so hard for The Shining, is because it is, in a sense, it's about a guy who feels trapped and trapped by, and who kind of hates his family in a way, right? Like the thing that is his child. Trapped
He's
he
overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like to the point where he like his Eraserhead sequence feels like a nightmare within a nightmare of like because his head blows off, right? And a child picks
Yes.
it up and takes it to a factory where it's made into erasers, which inherently, like there are things that inherently take marks away rather than making them, right? So it's sort of like worrying about losing his creativity and his ability to make things as a result of this child that he's brought into the world that he doesn't understand, and that is strange and alien to him, um and he doesn't know how to care
That's
for it.
definitely
There's
yeah,
some
so there's
Yeah,
what everyone what even the ogre in that meme you mentioned earlier will see in this movie is that there are anxieties around parenthood. That's like the most obvious thing happening here. But one of the things that I definitely felt more on this watch is that there's a lot of there's a there's a theme about like the fruits of modernism in this movie because okay, so the main character of this movie lives in this very industrial part of town. We never really see any nature at all. There's
yeah,
like, when we are outside, we're in like a factory district. There's no signs of like real plant life or anything like that. It's all we go into these interiors and there are like visible pipes you can see. The movie is obsessed with like machinery noises, like the sounds of radiators humming and electrical lights and elevators that barely work, and there's barely any windows, in a lot of these rooms. It's all very man-made and artificial.
yeah,
He works at a factory when his has that dream where his head gets blown off. A little boy picks it up and takes it to a pencil factory so they can sell it to them to use for erasers. You know, like there's a scene at the very, very, very beginning of the movie where some mysterious man pulls a lever to like cause the pregnancy, I guess you could call it. To sort of like set everything in motion. So there's like levers and machinery, and it's all, you know, it's kind of like the horrors of the modern world, right? And
Yeah.
like
I
what
mean,
happens,
the only
what hold on
natural, sorry.
real quick. So like the baby that is born from this modern world is very like sperm coated. It's like a
Yeah.
weird sperm alien thing. So it's all masculine and no feminine, essentially. And it's this weird alien little monster sperm thing. And so there's a lot of like the absence of, you know, the natural and the feminine in the modern world. And it's almost like, you know, the horror at like seeing the fruits of what modernism produces. And it's this weird alien monster thing that we don't really understand or know what to do with, you know? So like I definitely noticed another layer of things happening in this movie that we'll, you know, elaborate on as we continue to talk about it. But
Yeah.
it's not just, oh, isn't it stressful that he has an alien baby?
No,
Though that's
like that's
definitely
part of it. Is yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying you're saying that, but I think a lot of people, I've listened to discussions about Eraserhead where it seems like that's all they got from it. You know, oh, it's a movie about how it's, you know, stressful to have a baby,
Yeah.
especially if it
Yeah.
has,
Well, that's yeah.
you know
I
what I
mean,
mean?
that's Ogre understands surface level themes like fear of fatherhood and
Yes,
anxiety around
yes,
sick
exactly.
baby. Yeah. But yeah, there's the natural world and the absence of the feminine. I mean, like it's really interesting too that like the only natural object really that you see in the movie is that weird tree on his
Growing out of
bedside
dirt.
table, yeah, growing out of a
Yeah,
mound
that
of
has
dirt.
no leaves on it. Yeah, it's growing, but it's barren, essentially. And it's inside, so it's like not getting any proper natural light, but it's kind of growing anyway. It's yeah, it's a very strange image, but it's really interesting. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot to unpack here, but like the basic story, the threadbare narrative that runs through this thing is that oh god, Henry is his name,
Yes.
played by Jack Nance, who has hair like an eraser. He's wandering through his sort of industrial world. I like this his little elevator that like barely works and takes a long time, and eventually he gets a call saying like, oh, you know, Mary called and she said that you're invited over to her parents' house for dinner. So he goes over there and he sees Mary and he's like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while, where have you been? You don't come around anymore. We will eventually learn that's because she was pregnant and didn't
Yeah.
tell him or didn't want to tell him, didn't know how to tell him. So he's invited over to the girl he's been seeing's family's house to meet them. It's very awkward and strange, in part because he's a very shy, neurotic mess, and in part because they're very strange.
Yes. The
um,
weird seizure that his girlfriend has on the sofa and then her mom brushes her hair until it stops is
yes, and then the
yeah.
mother has a weird seizure type thing as well, and the chickens. We'll get all into
Oh,
all the details
we'll
there.
get to all of that. Yeah. This was
But
I'll just a quick note. This was an odd one to have a dinner associated with. By the way, we ended up
yes,
not doing the full thing because so I didn't know exactly what the meatball and mashed potatoes with gravy like heads were supposed to represent until I started asking because getting down to the wire and we hadn't done any of it yet. And as it turns out, the idea was that it would be like when he cuts open the baby at the end, and it would look like that, and that's what we would be eating. And I was like, no, thank you, I'm good.
no, thank you.
Please, let's not.
Yes, so he goes over. He doesn't really know why he's there at first, but he's meeting her family, and it's awkward and
And her
stuff like
dad
that.
is this like telling this weird story about how he can't feel his arm anymore, and it's kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to talk about that relates to some of the themes we talked about, but I want to get through the main story is that he eventually is confronted by the mother of his girlfriend. She says, like, have you had sexual intercourse with Mary? Like really grilling him. He's like, that's none of your business, you know? And then she eventually forces it out of him that they have because Mary is pregnant. And so it's like, now you have to marry her, right? You know, he's being pressured into marrying her because they accidentally got pregnant. And so then there's the reveal from the girlfriend, Mary, that like they don't even know if it's a baby yet. And you go, what?
Excuse
What
me.
does that mean? And then you
What
find
exactly
out.
does that mean in this crazy world?
Well, you find out what that
Yeah.
means is that it's a weird little alien dinosaur looking thing.
Some people have
Kevo,
compared it to a lamb fetus, which is an interesting choice as well. I don't know, like there's a theory that it is
um,
a lamb fetus, and that is obviously not true. But it
no,
is
it's a
it's
it's
a
a
prop.
puppet.
Yeah, it's a
It's a really good
slimy,
puppet.
greasy, nasty little puppet, and it looks great. And it's
Oh yeah,
but it even has like a little bit of like a lamb's cry to it, right? So there's another little hint
yes.
of the symbolic in there, the innocence in this really bizarre and industrialized, chaotic world, right?
Yes, and so the weird little alien baby. See, I compared it to a sperm, and Kevo has said, "Jamie, see a doctor. That's not what sperm is supposed to look like." Okay, listen. It's a little sperm monster. It's all wrapped up, and we'll eventually get to when they cut it open. It's like, oh no, that was its skin, and you're like, what the fuck am I watching? But then it does kind of shoot out and have like a sort of long tail. We see basically it from the very beginning. It's like if a sperm was an alien creature. Like that's I think that's fair to say. The symbolism is definitely all over this movie. Um, and so they
I
get
mean,
this
like,
little thing home, and it's
real quick, because like there's a scene earlier or at one point where like he's sleeping with somebody. I don't even think it's not the girlfriend. He's sleeping next to somebody in the same bed, and like he's pulling these like long, almost like supersized sperms out of the blanket underneath him, trying to like he's
yeah,
like, there, not this shit again. No, thank you. So
yes.
yeah,
Anyway, they get the alien home, and they're trying to take care of it. They're living in his shitty little apartment, and it's not going well. It's really stressing Mary out. The thing just keeps crying constantly. It's weird as hell looking. Obviously, that's part of the stress, but they're doing their best to take care of it. They don't really know what to do, but they're trying to sleep at night, and Mary gets so overwhelmed by its constant crying that she says, "You know what? I'm leaving. I'm out of here. I can't do it. I'm sorry." Leaving the baby alone with Henry, who for the rest of the movie sort of struggles to take care of it. There's no real progression there. You know, there's like an interaction he has with a sort of femme fatale figure who lives across the hall from him and things like that. But in terms of the story,
it gets sick. Nothing
it gets
much
sick.
happens, and then he kills it.
Yeah, well, does he kill it?
I kinda right. Like he cuts it open and then stabs it with the scissors, and then it like
But then
bones up and.
it grows giant. So
I guess that's
I
true.
don't
Yeah, I
know.
don't know.
Yeah, that's where the sort of like what literally happens in the movie sort of disappears. There's definitely implications like he just kind of wants to die and maybe he kills himself or something,
Yeah,
but
there's that's
in
a
terms
common one, common
what
interpretation.
actually happens unclear. It's more of a premise than a story, I would say. um, but yeah, so it's a little hard to appreciate as a story, I would say. There's a
Yeah,
lot to appreciate as a film, right? So, first of all, I love the cinematography in this movie, especially for how low budget it is. It's very sort of evocative and cool. There's a lot of great shots in it. Shot that just showed up on screen with all the sort of eraser shavings blooming from behind his head with the like giant hair light on him. You know, there's so many
yeah.
great shots and like visual motifs and little snippets of things that are very evocative and stunning. The sound design, as has been mentioned in the chat already, is like the coolest surrealist sound design of all time, really. I mean, it was incredibly influential. Obviously, David Lynch goes on to do a lot of similar things in a lot of his movies in terms of his use of sound. He is also a credited sound designer, not only on this film, but basically everything he's ever made. He's really big into sound design. And there is certainly more sound design in this movie than there is score. Um, a lot of it is sort of like exaggerations of mechanical noises in the environment, like extreme exaggerations of mechanical noise. It's a very sort of tense, noisy, and ominous sound design landscape for the movie, and it's probably the best part of the movie. If I had to pick one thing, that's the highlight for sure.
Yeah. We have
Um,
Georgius Rex asks, "Who's the tap dancer in the blonde wig?" Tap dancer is generous. Don't know that I would call it a full-on tap dance. It's sort of like
the lady in the
the
radiator, she
lady in the
kind of shuffles
radiator.
back and
Yeah,
forth and steps on some sperms.
yeah, and she has a repeated line where she calls to him from the inside of the radiator and says things like "In heaven, everything is fine." Over and over again, which is kind of interesting because her deformity, her strange deformity, like this time around, I kind of noticed that she looks almost like a sheep, like, from that
Yes.
side. So that's there is that like innocence and sort of like you can see where the spiritual comment, this movie being his most spiritual comes to him from, right? Is that he is using a lot of imagery that associate, Christian imagery that associates with, heaven and
Yeah,
hell.
loosely. Yes,
Very,
yeah. I
yeah,
would it feels to me like there's something of a sort of like anguished cry for help about the horrors of the modern world, and then there's this weird lamb woman in the radiator that's like, "Well, don't worry, in the world beyond, everything's fine." Uh,
yeah.
like this is a fucking nightmare. And you don't know how you got here. You don't know where this is going, what the fruits of it will be. The fruits of it are alien and strange to you, and you don't know what to do about it. You feel very alienated from it. And then there's this sort of figure that appears to tell him that, like, don't worry, when you're dead, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
um,
There are interesting like the radiator is sort of his safe space too, right? Like that's his sort of happy place
yeah,
because
kind
whenever
of.
he's
Yeah.
in a moment, like he gets home from work and he's in a moment of stress, he lies down on the bed to stare at the radiator, which like turns into, you can like it almost like a room, right? That's where she is. But there's one point at the early stages when he comes home to Mary trying to feed the baby, and he lies down on the bed to do his radiator daydream, and a stage appears, the spotlight, comes on, but he's pulled out of it by the crying of the weird alien baby. And
Yes.
that's like that's a really interesting image. I didn't get anything from it originally, but my Nikki, when she was watching it, she was like, "Oh, it's like it's like his dreams or his ambition, right, of like being, yeah, zoning out, his dream of, being in the spotlight is being, like detracted from by this child that he has had sort of thrust upon him through, you know whatever circumstance, through circumstance, essentially, right? Like it's not, he didn't plan this, it's the surprise, dropped on him.
Yeah.
So
It
there's
is just like little.
interesting
Well,
associative shots like that, right? Which I think work,
yeah.
like
Well,
they work
the
well.
radiator thing, like, that is like a little fantasy world of comfort to a degree, is sort of to a degree. Like,
Yeah.
there's like the carnival-esque, like, merry-go-round organ that plays
Yeah. Yeah.
for that. There's like kind of evocative of childhood memories he might have, kind of thing. It's all very loose, but yeah, and so as Topaz dude, like inside the radiator, she keeps like stepping on the weird sperm creatures that are falling from the sky and destroying them and going like, "Ugh," giving like a little smile every time she does it. It's very strange. Topaz dude says it's the source of anxiety in his real life, and it's like, I guess. Feels a little hard to be definitive about some of these things, but so like in terms of my point that it's sort of like about the horrors of modernity. So obviously the fact that there's very little of the natural in the movie at all, it's all very artificial and man-made, that we talked about already. The one bit of natural symbolism we get is the pile of dirt from which a barren tree grows, you know That's not good. There's a lot of machinery, there's a lot of factory imagery as well, but there's little things too. So he goes over to the parents' house, right? And well, he says that he worked at a factory, right? So that's a bit of that as well. But then also, the dad is a plumber, and he goes on a little rant about how, like, oh, I lived here before this place is like the hellhole it is now, but I put pipes in all of these houses. People think pipes grow in their houses, but they don't. Look at my knees, look at my knees. And then he tries to come show his knees, and the mother stops him. So
Yeah.
um what I got from that, in a literal sense, is that he's trying to be like, look, people think like all this infrastructure and all the piping and stuff just happens out of nowhere, but it, like, people are doing it and it takes a toll on them, because like the damage to his knees from working in plumbing for however many years would be visible. It's taken a toll on him and everything. But I think it's very, what I didn't catch the first time was him remarking how, like, this place used to be much more green
Or it used to be
and
different.
natural.
Yeah, it used to.
Yeah, it used to be
It
different.
didn't
Nobody,
used to
but
be an industrial like pipe land, right?
yes. Um, yeah, but now, but he describes it like what it is now as a hellhole, right? So like
Yes.
modernity has ruined this place, right? And then the chickens. Let's talk about the chickens, Hugh.
Yes.
Uh,
Can we talk about the chickens, Jamie? I've been dying to talk to you about the chickens all day. The
so the
man-made
chickens
chickens.
are man-made. Yes, they're I like essentially genetically engineered to like serving-sized portioned chickens, right? Where like each person gets one chicken essentially, and it's like, the portion for a normal person's dinner. But when it's time to cut them open, they ooze a weird, unnatural
Oh,
black goo.
um, yeah, that's one way of putting it. A lot of people interpret it as they begin to menstruate.
Um,
That's yeah. That's a
it didn't occur to me as blood, but I suppose it could. I mean, it's in black and white, so you can't tell whether it's black or red. But it didn't. I didn't get that. I mean, maybe there's something there. Sure.
yeah.
It's
So yeah,
definitely
so like
part of it.
some people interpret it as a reference to birth gone wrong or menstruation. That's a
Well, there's
that's a
definitely a lot of that, like, he goes over their house and they have a dog that's just given birth to, like, a whole, you know,
litter of puppies.
litter
Yeah,
or whatever the word is of puppies, and they're all, like, rather frantically feeding, and it's just kind of just another image of, reproduction and everything, but it's in this context, it makes him uncomfortable, right? And this is also before it's been revealed to him that he got her pregnant, right? So it's a little
yeah,
bit of foreshadowing, you could say. So yeah, whether it's a weird unnatural black goo or weird menstrual blood, the man-made unnatural tiny, you know, single serving chickens ooze some mystery goo and wiggle around even though they're cooked and dead. And then he
yes.
he looks at it and looks around at the table to be like, help me out. Is anyone else seeing this shit? And no one else really gives him the right reaction
No,
because
because the mom is busy flicking her tongue around and having a bit of a freak out um, as she watches this happen. Uh,
yes.
and the dad is just kind of sitting there smiling at him in a way that, holding the smile in a way that makes it really uncomfortable and creepy. Mary begins
Mhm.
to weep, and she gets up to, leave the room, and as she cries, and the father just sits there staring at him
And he's
for a
like,
little
"She'll
bit.
don't worry, she'll calm down in a minute." And then they just
Yeah.
sit there in silence because in addition to all the other things it is just a stress stream, the whole thing. So there's a lot of
Yes.
really just uncomfortable, tense moments where he like is like, "Please, someone, at least someone acknowledge how weird this is for the sake of my sanity," and then no one does, essentially. Yeah, so there are a lot of images of that, of this sort of like, I don't know, the corrupted or unnatural fruits of modernity in this movie, and like the sort of alienation
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
that a character that a very that especially that a very sort of like hapless, aimless, and neurotic man with no clear direction in life feels in this world.
Yeah, with like a creative soul that is being stifled in a way too, right? By the presence of all of this. You know, there's
Um,
I would say so.
what does he do that's creative?
Well, he works as a
What is
printer, right? Like that's his
Oh,
career.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. He works as a printer, and then she even says, "Oh, he's quite clever at printing." As
Yeah.
in, like, he's, talented and creative as an artist. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah. You're right, I
Yeah,
forgot
and
about
I
that
mean,
part.
like his radiator dream is a stage with somebody dancing on it. You know,
Mhm.
that's obviously he's not like Billy Elliot here being like, I want to dance, Dad. You know, that's not. But it is an expression, like a form of self-expression that is like seen, right? It's in the spotlight, and that's something that he's fantasizing, and the sperms are encroaching on that. The baby pulls him out of it. And then his big nightmare about his head being that the source of his ideas being turned into something that erases rather than marks, right? There's very clear that's got to be some form of symbolism about like worrying about losing the thing that makes you expressive, right? Like that's a very artistic thing to worry about in this kind of
Yeah.
instance.
No, I can see that for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Real quick, Topaz Dude says the classic American family becoming corrupted and effed up is definitely a theme that runs through his work. And Mr. Burpler responded with, Lynch likes to explore the juxtaposition of wholesome family and degeneracy. Yes, I think that's like maybe the most well understood thing about it, especially like Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet. That's kind of
yeah.
like the big stamp on the front of it, right? Is
It's
like,
really it's really interesting. I find that David Lynch a lot of David Lynch okay. David Lynch's best work is not cynical. It deals with like dark themes, and so I think Blue Velvet is probably the most quintessential example of this sort of theme running through his work. So, like Blue Velvet, there's just normal people living their normal, wholesome lives, and we're not taking that ironically. We're not implying, as like some modern writers would, that there's something corrupt and terrible about that itself. David Lynch is a big fan of just normal, wholesome Americana stuff. That's you see interviews or like videos of him where he's like, I just had like 2 Coca-Colas and what does he say? He's like, I had a cookie and 2 Cokes or something like that. And he's like, wow, incredible. And he loves going to old-fashioned
yeah,
diners and stuff like that. And I just love Mad Men. I just want to live in that world. He's a big fan of the sort of normal, wholesome kind of like 50s Americana stuff, right? Because he was
yeah.
born in 1946.
He was
And
born in the Pacific Northwest in 1946 in a
yes.
pretty
And so,
classic suburb, from what I understand. Right, like his
yeah.
upbringing is pretty normal, and so one of the things that you can really feel in this movie too is that he went to Philadelphia for a while. He was living in that shithole of a city, and that really like he talked a lot about one of the things he mentioned was in Philadelphia he saw things that he never thought he would see human beings doing at any point, right? Like one of them was a woman who had out in the street who had bare breasts, and she like grabbed her own boobs to suckle at her nipples and spoke like a baby to herself on the street.
Yeah.
And it like the being surrounded by like late 60s early 70s Philly and seeing these bizarre mental patients just walking around the street. We call them Eagles fans today, but back then they didn't have a category. But like that really clearly influenced the way that he viewed things. And so like there's this sort of
Yes.
dichotomy of like they call it the heaven and hell. You could call it like the highs and lows of America, right? Like he has this the world of the suburbs is like a million miles away from the city, and he kind of brings both of them and examines them
And
together.
especially the city in the 70s, right?
Yes, in the
The
70s in
Philadelphia in
particular.
the
Yeah.
70s, I can't imagine how shitty that was. Um, but yeah, so like Blue Velvet is the quintessential example, right? Like there's sort of corruption and degeneracy lurking beneath, right? Or on the fringes or on the outside of the idyllic world. That's like, maybe not taken into consideration, or is going unnoticed by the people living their normal, happy suburban lives, but it's there. And like, it's more like, showing the dichotomy, or like what's lurking beneath the surface, and like what sort of evils are still happening around all this normal stuff, right? So like
Yeah.
there's a lot of characters who are basically normal people who stumble into like that's what Blue Velvet is essentially. There's a guy who's really curious and sort of uncovers this weird underworld where people are doing all sorts of terrible fucked up things, but he's so, what would you say, like fascinated by it, because
Yeah.
there's adventure kind of
Yeah, it's
lurking in
almost like a
there.
voyeuristic sort of, like
Yes.
fascination with the way that, with the evils that people can get up to, which is another, like, that kind of leads into Lost Highway and into Mulholland Drive, and later, well, those two big ones for me. I'm not as big of a fan of Inland Empire as a few people in the chat I see agree with me. But those ones are very much like his sort of looking at what makes evil people do evil things, and like what they must, like what their dreams must be like, essentially, is what he
Yes.
becomes fascinated with. And there's this voyeuristic sense of him in it that I
There's
find very
much less
interesting.
of the wholesome Americana in Lost Highway as there
Yes.
is in Blue Velvet and in Twin Peaks,
Or in Mulholland Drive, even. Like at the
or even
beginning.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. As soon as he moves to Hollywood, it
Yeah.
sort of makes movies that are more about Hollywood, and oh boy, you see the results. But we'll get to Lost Highway in a bit. Yeah. So certainly, this movie feels like it's set in like a hell of like an industrial city where there is like no connection to the natural
Oh,
anymore, and there's this helpless guy who's just like, this is all pretty overwhelming and terrifying. I don't know what to do about any of this.
yeah, I
And
wanted to.
then
Oh, sorry, real quick. I
go
just
ahead.
wanted to say that, like, I was trying to remember what the context in which he said this, because I never can. But I'm pretty sure it was about somebody asked him how he wrote that scene in Zippy's diner in Mulholland Drive, right? Where
Mhm.
the guy comes around to look at the trash can, and he kind of rambled about how he used to go and get like a chocolate ice cream shake from there all like every day, and like, a cup of coffee and a chocolate shake. And then one day in the dumpster behind the diner, he found a box for the chocolate shake, and every ingredient ended with, "een" or "ide," and he
Yes.
was very off put and horrified by that. And you can tell that he's been like very concerned with the or that he's fascinated by like the lack of natural ingredients, the lack of nature in the modern world of the time, right? You can really
Yeah.
feel his interest from the beginning of it. But like the fact that he was like, "Oh yeah, that inspired me to write this scene where somebody goes around and, is scared to death behind the dumpster." It's like like one of the most terrifying things he can remember is like finding out that the ice cream he's been eating isn't real ice cream. You know, like
He's such an interesting guy. It's been mentioned in the chat before in a couple different ways, but I too am someone who appreciates David Lynch a lot more than I would say that I'm a massive fan of all of his work. That said, I legitimately love Blue Velvet and Twin Peaks, and I really like Mulholland Drive. So like he's got some really high highs for me, but then oh boy, he has some very low lows, like Twin Peaks: The Return. I hate the way that ended with a burning, fiery passion. I'm also not a big fan of Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me. I think that movie kind of sucks. Um, but you know what? Hey, I'm glad he exists and he's making stuff. Like I don't know if I'll ever really watch Eraserhead again after this. Like
yeah. I mean, like
I appreciate
after
him more than I
having a
really
discussion,
enjoy
sorry, yeah, after having a discussion, I feel like we're probably like, good on Eraserhead for.
it. Kyle R says, incredibly annoying that insufferable letterbox media literacy enjoyer community has mainstreamed the interpretation that Lynch's work was Pleasantville beta when no one loved Americana more than him. Yes,
Yeah.
I would say that's definitely true. And related to that, I would say it's kind of annoying that the general sort of like not especially thoughtful interpretation of Eraserhead is that it's just about, anxieties around being a parent.
Or
You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, it's like, yes, yeah, but there's way more to it than that. This isn't like an antinatalist movie. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. There's the concern about like how to deal with a child with a deformity of some kind, but also it's almost like the baby isn't really a baby at all, like of his. It's like the child of this modern world that he's stuck in and overwhelmed by. And so it produces this thing that is all masculine, no, not feminine. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like it's this weird, it's been corrupted, and he's like not really sure if like what there is to do about it at this point, and he's kind of horrified by it. It's definitely a nightmare, right? But I think there's a bit more going on than just, oh, having a kid is scary.
Well, yeah, and like there's a lot of things that I don't exactly know what to make of with this movie, right? For example, his relationship with the femme fatale who lives across the hallway, especially in the last half of the movie. So after Mary
Mhm.
has left and he's kind of wandered around aimlessly and had his nightmare about his head being used to make erasers and like all of those things, he has this moment with that woman in the hallway where like she is coming home with a weird skeezy guy, and he opens the door to see her and watches it happen, and then his head is replaced with the baby's head as it stands there and looks at them in like shocked horror, and she kind of has this repulsed look at him, and then he closes the door on them, and like that's basically the end of their relationship. Doesn't come back, and
Yeah, well, that we're not quite ready, I think, to be done with Eraserhead, but that would actually make a great segue into Lost Highway, which seems to be, among
mm,
other things, about a sort of romantic jealousy.
oh yeah,
It's
for sure.
and so there's definitely a bit of that here. It's like he's found himself in this rather horrifying predicament, right? Where he had this baby that has a deformity, to put it mildly, and the mother left him with it, and he's just like, "Oh God, what do I do?" And I'm just sort of stuck here, right, with this baby. And so he has this fantasy about this very attractive woman, who, of course, is interested in him for no particular reason, and who, is this mysterious, strange woman that he can have a little affair with, right? And that's the part of a movie that, like, it feels like it's a dream within a dream,
Yeah.
because, like, he has this fantasy about being with her that ends with them being sucked into a pool of, uh, um, cum in the bed
Yes.
that sort of, like, overwhelms them, and then that leads to the most horrifying, probably, I think you could argue, bit of the whole movie, where like his head pops off and is replaced by the little baby monster thing, like screaming and then twisting a little bar with its hands, and the head's rolling on the ground and like this like checkerboard pattern. It's oozing blood everywhere. Yeah, like that's the dream within a dream aspect of the movie. It's like it's a little bit like The Shining in a sense, that he has this fantasy about a beautiful woman, and then as soon as he like starts to get it on with a beautiful woman, it turns into a nightmare. There's a little bit of something there with Room
Yeah.
237.
Well,
But
speaking of
ultimate
room numbers, by the way, funnily enough, not only did we pick Jack Nance's first and final movie, we also picked the only two David Lynch movies until Twin Peaks: The Return, where Room 26 it plays a prominent role. But with
Oh, I didn't is this room number 26 in this? I didn't catch
yeah,
that.
Henry lives in Room 26, and then in Lost Highway, Room 26 is
Yes, it comes
also plays a
back.
big deal or big role.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like when he sees her later, it's almost like though the whole movie feels like a nightmare, that feels like a little bit like in reality, this woman across the street with him is just with this skeezy guy. Maybe she's a prostitute. Who knows, really? But it's not him,
Yeah.
right? Like she's not actually
It's
with
all a
him.
fantasy, and
Yes, exactly.
he's fallen in love with the idea rather than the person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then so he wakes up from that, crazy dream where he gets turned into an eraser. And then he sees the woman going off with this other guy who's just kind of smiling in his face, like rubbing it in, which is pretty funny. There's a lot of like little funny moments like that throughout the movie. Um I would like more of them. I think I would enjoy this movie more if it was even funnier. But I'll take what I can get.
I mean, I laughed out
After
loud at the part where the dad explains that the doctors said he could never use his arm again, so he just rubbed it every day for a while, and now he can use
you
it.
got
But
to be
now
so I could use it again, and
it got to be so I can use it again, but I still can't feel it. Look, and he slap punches himself a couple times just to prove the point. That's pretty funny.
I like the look at my knees sort of
Look at my
thing.
knees is really funny too.
There's a lot of funny stuff. Like when Mary threatens to leave, right, and she's about to leave, and then she comes up to the bed, and we see it from Jack Nance's perspective, Henry's
Yeah,
perspective, and she's like reaching under the bed and shaking it, and this goes on for like quite a long time, and he's just sitting there like, "What are you doing?" But he doesn't say it. And then eventually she just pulls out the suitcase and leaves. But like everything about
yeah,
her
that's really
motion there is like really like awkward and strange, and it's like you have no idea what she's doing until it's finally just like, oh, I'm just getting my bag. That's it. It's a strange, surreal type of awkward funny, but I like it. Um anyway, after he sees the woman go off with the other guy, he kind of lays in bed. We see that the dead tree growing out of the pile of dirt on his dresser has grown a little bit more. He just kind of sits there for a while, and eventually he's like, you know what? I'm going to see what's inside, like the sort of swaddled, wrapping around the weird alien sperm baby. And so he goes to cut it open, and twist, that was its skin,
Yep.
which is, like a nice sort of little horrifying twist. And he's like, oh God. And
Then he pokes.
he,
He like it. So it kind of opens up almost like in a weird way, sort of like a blooming flower, right? Like it kind of opens up like that, and like its heart or something that's in the middle kind of pushes itself to the forefront, and so he pokes it with the scissors, and it just like this
starts oozing, I don't know,
oozing
paper
and
mache, something. It's
and then it
weird.
starts to foam, like
It foams and then it grows like longer, like elongated, like the sort of sperm looking thing from the very, very, very beginning. And then it grows into like a giant head that like fills most of the room, and it keeps like hard cutting around in different positions in the room. And then like a light explodes, and all of a sudden he's in heaven inside the radiator, and he sees Lamb Chop Lady, and she gives him a hug, and that's the end of the movie. So I don't know. Presumably he died or something.
yeah,
I don't know how much more you could say literally about what actually happens
yeah,
there. But then
or
it's
like
just then it
yeah,
just sort of ends.
yeah. It's just sort of done after that. And yeah, or like so okay, Mr. Burpler asks, the baby is a product of pure modernity, and kind of, right? Because like we see a weird pimply deformed man pull a couple of levers in order to maybe cause the pregnancy.
Yeah, because also like we see Jack Nance's head, he opens his mouth and the sperm monster thing comes out, and then uh then we just see Jack's sort of normal life, and eventually he finds out that she was pregnant. So it's a sort of unnatural, uh at the very least unnatural vision of the creation of life, that it's like, just sperm only essentially. And
Yeah,
like the fact that it's pulled by a lever by a guy that looks like he's in some sort of factory adds to the sort of like, this is the fruits of modernity type thing, I think you could say.
yeah,
And then the alien itself, like when it's finally unleashed from the weird wrapping skin thing that it's
Swaddling
in
cloth
gets
is,
really
yeah.
long, and it's got the head that's just kind of a little bit wider than the rest of its wiggly little tail, and there's all sorts of like little sperms being thrown around in the movie. The fact that it's a life form, but it's only the masculine. It doesn't have any of the body and the natural and the feminine in it. It's just this weird, fruitless
Yeah.
fruit of modernity type thing. I don't know. That's what I get from it anyway.
Yeah. Georgius is asking how do you connect Leverman with the child? I thought he was in Henry's head. Well, the way you connect it is like basically that we see the lever get pulled, and then the next shot that we see is like a sperm thing getting flung into, like,
Into the world.
into the world, right? Which is like, that's the surrealist filmmaking thing. Like, it's very up to your interpretation. If you don't get that from it, then like really there's not, it's just kind of like because they're next to each other, you sort of put that together, right? Like that's
Mhm.
basically it. There's no
And
actual logical tie between the two of them. It's more
well,
just a
yeah.
symbolic thing.
I mean, and yeah, I suppose you could say Leverman is in his head, but like everything's in his head
Yeah,
in
the whole
some
thing's a
sense.
dream.
Yeah,
Or
so
is
like
it?
I think Leverman, because we see Leverman towards the very end, and it's like he's got a sort of deformed, pimply face, the same way the kid looked when it was sick. And so it's hard to say, but there's definitely a lot of like machinery imagery associated with how this little life thing is made, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Something like that. Then it just sort of ends. And that's Eraserhead.
Yeah.
Um,
And who knows? Maybe we're wrong. That's kind of the thing with this movie is like
yeah.
maybe none of that.
Well,
Not
I
really,
would
but like, I
no,
think there's
not
some
maybe
pretty,
none of that, but maybe there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I'm just not seeing. But like it seems rather straightforward thematically.
yeah. I
It's
think I
sort
think
of
that there's, and especially with his background, I think you can draw some pretty concrete conclusions about what the headspace he was in when making this. Like, so
mhm.
someone mentioned earlier that maybe when he says this is his most spiritual movie, what he means is his most personal, and I could definitely see that being the case, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
clear anxieties about his own fatherhood, and his own career.
Very personal, and it's very abstract
Yeah,
compared to his other films. Maybe Inland Empire is more abstract in some sense, but, like, this has gotta be up there in terms of the most surreal as well. It's like,
yeah,
I think because he's kind of influenced by people like Freud and Jung and all that sort of stuff, has this idea that, the spiritual is, like, closer to abstract than it is to like concrete literal things happening. So like the more surreal, the more spiritual is kind of you can tell how he thinks about it to a degree.
yeah,
And as evidenced by this film, I would say, you know.
yeah. I think that I think that about covers it, honestly.
Yeah. I like I said, I appreciate it. It's an important movie in the history of film. It's very influential and it launched his career and his career went on to do, I would say, more interesting things, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Things that because I like a good balance, right? I like it when what is literally happening is decipherable and compelling and like a story you can sink your teeth into, and that on top of that or like beneath that, however you want to think about it, there's like thematic super I was going to say supernatural, I mean the symbolic thematic things happening that you can really think about and savor and appreciate. And I
yeah,
feel like this movie is just it's a little off balance in that regard. I think especially when like about halfway through the movie there kind of stops being much of a story. That's a little disappointing because it's the back half that really drags, in my opinion.
yeah.
It's
That
only,
it starts to. It's only an hour and a half or an hour and 20 minutes, but the last bit really starts to feel like we're kind of spinning the tires a little bit.
yeah, yeah. This could have been 60 minutes long. Um, Adam's, Adam Morris says Kubrick's favorite movie, right? According to David Lynch, uh, Kubrick had said that this was his favorite film when he showed it to a bunch of producers. Now that does read to me like he's a little bit just kind of fucking with the studio
Taking the
execs.
piss, yeah.
Not that he doesn't like it. I think it's obvious that he does really like it. But like getting a whole bunch of like, Paramount executives to watch this movie, or Warner Brothers executives, as it probably was, like, oh, you got to check out this new movie. I love this movie. And they're probably like, dude, what the fuck am I watching?
Favorite movie I've ever seen. Best thing that's ever been made, probably. Like
I don't doubt that he really liked this movie. But I think David Lynch is the only person I've ever heard say that it was his favorite movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and like you could easily read that as Kubrick being like, "Hey guys, come check out my favorite movie," and then he gets once he's got them all in the room and he shows them this, and he just kind of says like, "So what'd you think?" Like, yeah.
No, he clearly really liked it. But it's interesting to me because he really liked it, and it was definitely an influence on how weird he allowed himself to get with The Shining about 3 years later, right?
Yeah.
But he never really got as abstract as David Lynch gets. You know what I mean? He got as abstract as Kubrick will allow himself to get. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Kubrick is sort of like the version of Lynch that, I mean, that's one of the things that elevates him above Lynch, I think, really, is the fact that he's able to kind of keep it concrete while also, like, he gets abstract to a point and then but he doesn't allow that to overwhelm the literal happenings of the story.
Yeah, and I think David Lynch has a tendency to get that balance wrong, or at least for my personal taste, get that balance wrong. Obviously, there are Lynch heads who insist that everything he does is amazing. I am not one of those people.
Yeah, well,
I think he's
arguments with
got some hits and he's got some hits and he's got some duds. This is closer to a hit than anything, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly like it a lot more than Twin Peaks: The Return or what was the other one? Fire Walk with Me. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Haven't seen Dune, but this might edge Dune out for me a little bit on that. I'm not sure. Although I do like the weirdness, the weird creepy effects and the fun like shots and sets and everything that he does for it.
Anyway,
yeah. Georgius Rex says this could have been 0 minutes and it would be an improvement. Well, you know what?
I wouldn't go that far.
I wouldn't go. I would not say so, but I think I see where you're coming from. Yeah, this is definitely not one that's going to be everybody's cup of tea. So,
Topaz Dude coming in clutch with the perfect segue for Lost Highway says, conversely, I feel like Lynch was a tiny bit inspired by Eyes Wide Shut for his later work. Lost Highway predates Eyes Wide Shut. However, I do think Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive are very much like Eyes Wide Shut in that they seem to be very, to a great degree, about sort of romantic jealousy.
Yes.
Which is a theme that showed up a little bit in Eraserhead, but really, really, really leaps to the forefront in Lost Highway.
Indeed.
Lost Highway came out in 1997, so 20 years later, as we mentioned. R.I.P. Jack Nance. This was his last film before he died. He played a small role, but a fun one. Glad he could be in there. Lost Highway is an interesting movie for like cameos and small bit parts. There's a shocking number of like recognizable people who show up for 2 seconds in this movie.
Richard Pryor being one of them.
Richard Pryor being one, of course. Gary Busey is in this movie, as is
Gary Busey is playing the most like the. It's funny because there is a character in this movie that you would expect Gary Busey to be playing, and he's not playing that character.
Yeah. Marilyn Manson also appears in this movie.
Oh, right. Yep.
He sure does. I think he's on the soundtrack as well. So there was a soundtrack that came out with this movie that was made by Nine Inch Nails and that he helped put it together, right? But there's a if you're a Nine Inch Nails fan, the song "The Perfect Drug" was on this soundtrack and not any of his other albums. But no Nine Inch Nails songs actually appear in the movie.
No, lots of Rammstein though. which is a
There's
choice.
one particular Rammstein song. I think there's some Smashing Pumpkins in there.
Yeah.
This movie, of all the David Lynch movies I've seen so far, has probably the most dated use of music.
Yeah, it's a strange combination.
There's definitely a sort of like industrial nu metal-y sort of vibe to this movie. I like it. It's interesting. This is a great vibes movie. All right, so let's start off. Let's start off with what I absolutely love about this movie. It's the vibes. This is a really cool movie. I love the way it looks. There's a lot of really great, iconic, and really like just eye-catching visual sequences in this movie.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
I think the use of music in general is pretty solid. There's a couple sequences that are legitimately one of the like some of the scariest stuff I've seen in a movie. I the mystery man at the party,
Oh
I
God,
fucking love.
he's
I
so good,
love
dude.
that
Robert
scene.
Blake.
It's so good. That scene feels like just a slightly more sinister version of like the director and the cowboy in Mulholland Drive out the
Yeah,
desert. These scenes, man, he's really good. He really mastered like the creepy scene set piece in isolation. There's definitely some things in this movie that I'm like, I'll remember that forever. Even if I never really quite come to grips with everything that's happening in this movie, literally. Again, I've only seen it the once and it was last night, so I haven't really had a ton of time to sit with it. Hugh, you said you've seen it twice, so
yeah.
I'm gonna
This is
be
my
leaning
second
on
watch
you
through.
to help me understand what literally happens in this movie. But this is also probably, I would say, one of Lynch's horniest movies.
Oh, for sure. Patricia
Uh,
Arquette's tits are all over this movie.
all over this movie. Now, I've not seen Wild at Heart, but I have the sneaking suspicion that this is, without a doubt, his horniest movie. A lot of boobies in this one. So if you're into that sort of thing, you'll appreciate it.
Not a bra to be seen in a lot of these. There are a lot of shots of of actresses coming to the camera, and it's like, oh, okay. Like, he pulled the George Lucas. He convinced them that there is no underwear in Hollywood.
Well, that's just true, Hugh. I love the way this movie looks. Like the film grain is just so nice. Like especially when we get into the middle section of the movie where Bill Pullman disappears for quite a while. The movie kind of changes color palettes, if you will, and gets like a very, very rich reds and greens, very saturated, very sort of like stylized. The whole movie's very stylized, but it takes a really interesting visual turn in the middle section of the movie. But I'm just like scrolling through a bunch of screenshots from this movie, a bunch of stills, and just every scene has something really awesome in it. I'm particularly struck by that weird sex scene they have in the desert in front of the car headlights.
Yeah.
Where it's like there's only one source of light and it's coming from the headlights, but also it's overexposed. So everything just has this crazy glow to
Like,
it.
yeah, angelic almost glow to it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool. This is in terms of vibes, hard to beat this movie in terms of pure vibes. Now, Hugh, before we get into like what actually happens in it, why don't you give us your overall thoughts?
I feel very much the same. This I did not remember it as well, or I didn't remember it very well to like talk about it when we started, like before I watched it, right? And then as we were watching it, everything kind of started. I was like, oh right, I remember this now. Okay, yeah, that's right, that happens, and okay, and I was able to sort of like take something that I think happens a lot when like you watch them for the second time, right? Because when I first watched Mulholland Drive, which is one of maybe my favorite one, I really like I really like Blue Velvet, and I really like Twin Peaks. I haven't rewatched Blue Velvet in a while, so that might climb up my list. But this one, I remember watching it the first time and kind of being confused, and just like the vibe stuck with me, and not much else at at the time. And then watching it again, I was able to sort of take the same tactic that I would with Mulholland Drive, and kind of look at it in from a different angle, maybe, or like kind of go into some of what his some of the spirituality and some of the supernatural elements that he's working with in this, because I think that's something that is often lost in the way that he does abstract and surrealist imagery, is that people tend to forget that he's very interested in supernatural phenomenon as well, right? Um,
And you're talking about Lost Highway now, or are you still talking about Mulholland Drive?
I'm talking about Lost Highway now.
Okay.
David Lynch in general is very interested in supernatural things, right? Like he likes that kind of, and I think
one of the so like Twin Peaks has some kind of supernaturally stuff in it. I think the supernatural sort of stuff he likes playing with the most is like people can have dreams of things that will happen later, or that dreams can tell you things about the future or the past.
Yeah, although like isn't Twin Peaks, if I'm remembering right, doesn't Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me kind of have like a weird time travel premonition type thing?
But I don't like that movie, so I'm going to ignore it.
Well, speaking of time travel premonition things, and yeah, we're gonna talk. That's kind of
okay. Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So Topaz Dude requested this, so there it is for you, Topaz Dude. This is one of the posters made for Lost Highway that says 2 thumbs down from Siskel and Ebert. 2 more great reasons to see a film by David Lynch, Lost Highway. So, yep, using a terrible review from Siskel and Ebert to promote the movie. Pretty funny. I can understand why Siskel and Ebert did not like this movie.
Yes.
I don't know how I feel about it. I think maybe if I can understand what's happening literally a bit more, it will climb up in appreciation for me. So I'm excited to talk about that. Hugh, why don't you try your best to summarize what even happens in this movie?
Okay.
Like, what is the premise of Lost Highway?
All right. Again, we're going off of like he is very he plays his movies very close to the chest, plays his cards very close to the chest with these. But one interview that he gave about this, somebody asked if the Bill Pullman character is sort of trapped in a time loop, forced to torturing himself over these awful, horrific murder that he committed, right, over and over again. And David Lynch pretty much said, like, yeah, that's pretty close. Like, that's pretty close to what's going on. There's a lot of Buddhist reincarnation themes, and in particular Tibetan Buddhism themes that he's playing with here. And there's the idea of like time travel and constant, like the sort of Nietzschean idea of cursing, like the curse the demon quote. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I don't know.
I am not.
I don't know it verbatim, but it's basically something that kind of goes like, if you found out that like a demon had like cursed you to live the same life, making the same mistakes over and over and over and over again, never being able to learn from them, you know, like how awful would that be, right? Like what, and sort of like the time is a flat circle. We've done this a million times.
I have
detective kind of thing.
Here's the full quote. What if someday or night a demon were to steal after you into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, this life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more. Would you not throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? Or have you once experienced a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, you are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine?
Yeah. So the more, an interesting sort of idea, play on the idea that like this person's soul is trapped in a endless loop of sort of reliving a horrific crime that he committed and not being able to change it. And it's tormenting him as a punishment for it, right? It's kind of like a vision
it's like The Lighthouse.
Yeah.
We kind of talked about that
a bit, and like David Lynch talked about it as like, oh, it's less of a circle and more of a spiral where like each level is a little higher or a little lower, right? So it plays on the idea of reincarnation. Like he recreates this younger version, this younger character for himself to meet the woman who he murdered again. And even still, in the opening bit, he is consumed with the idea that his wife is having an affair. He's very jealous. He's tormenting himself over this, even though he has no direct proof, really, right? But he's not satisfying her, and he's worried about not being enough for her. And in the second half, he's sort of recreating the way that he's met her, where he is everything for her, right? He can be what she needs, but it's still not enough, and so it's him sort of like constantly reinventing ways to blame her for his actions, and not learning anything, and not coming to a higher, to a state of like purgatory,
understanding, or
not remorse. They're like like the ogre says, no remorse of conscience. So that's sort of the idea. Now, I think that Mulholland Drive is a very similar theme. Someone who sort of attempts to hide from a horrific thing that they've done.
Yeah, by creating a fantasy world to live in instead.
Yeah, but they aren't able to. It's not able to. Come to fruition.
So you're saying it's a little bit like that, but it's like he's being looped through it over and over again, essentially. So I think there's a certain amount of sense that makes. But if you haven't seen the movie, that's not the experience you get while watching it. That's the experience that maybe you come to after having seen it and thought about it for a while, because the way it plays out is the movie basically starts with a really fun title sequence, like driving like a maniac down this highway in the dark, and some David Bowie song plays. The titles come boom right up to the camera. It's fun. Then after that's over, we cut into Bill Pullman, he looks sad, and he's just moseying about in his house. And then he gets like a buzzer on his little intercom system by the door, and he goes to answer it, and a voice tells him that it's Laurent. What's the first name? David Laurent
Dick
is
Laurent.
dead.
Sorry, Dick Laurent.
Dick Laurent is dead. And he's like, huh? What? And so he walks over to the window to see like who's at his intercom saying that. Oh, and there's no one there. Then he sees Patricia Arquette with a really
bad haircut. Some of the worst bangs I think I've ever seen on a woman in my life.
Yeah. And he's like, all right, I got to go out to the club tonight to perform as a sax man. And she's like, I don't feel like going tonight. Like,
sad I'm not are you upset that I'm not coming to the club?
Yeah. And he's like, no, it's fine. And then she's like, I don't want to go out, to listen to the club tonight. I'm just going to stay home and read, but like, you can wake me up when you get home. Right. And he's like, okay. So he goes out to play at the club, and he squawks on the saxophone a lot. And he's really squawking here. It's, it's pretty out there stuff. And then eventually he and his wife start receiving tapes in the mail from an unknown sender, and they start playing the tapes. The first one is just a shot of the outside of their house, and it's weird and a little creepy, but that's all it is, right? And then when he goes and he squawks on the saxophone some more, he has sex with his wife, but he finishes a little prematurely. Yeah. And he's a little embarrassed about it, and she's like, tries to console him, but he sort of, the pity makes it feel even worse, right?
So one thing I really love about that scene is that even the part at the beginning where it's kind of, romantic, feels incredibly violent. The way that he shot it and the way that the sound design works, it's so uncomfortable. It's like you're watching a murder. It's quite well done for that. Maybe worth noting, by the way, that this movie was in part inspired by O.J. Simpson. that is a fact.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I can see it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Uh, sorry,
so
real quick. Georgius Rex said, "Lost Highway is like kissing a mirror. You like what you see, but it's not much fun and it's kind of cold," says Roger Ebert. Well,
what?
Uh,
You like what you see?
that's that part. Maybe it's not
I didn't
much
need to
fun,
know
and
that.
yeah, maybe you could have just went. It's not much fun, and it's kind of cold. I don't know if everybody needed to know you kind of like making out with yourself in the mirror, but that's that's fine.
That's funny. Yeah, well, he had a way with words, that guy. If you ever want a fun time, you should watch it's pretty infamous at this point, is Siskel and Ebert arguing about Blue Velvet, because Roger Ebert hated Blue Velvet, and he's totally wrong, by the way. He's wrong to hate it. Basically, all of his criticisms suck. But Siskel's like, no, dude, what are you talking about? This movie's great. And they get into a pretty heated exchange about it. It's pretty funny. Yes. So anyway, Lost Highway. Uh, you know, they have sex, and it doesn't go especially great. And at one point, she kind of leans over to console him, and he sees the mystery man's face, like imposed over Patricia Arquette's. Yeah. It's pretty funny looking. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to show that on screen because it's hilarious. Come on. There it is. It's like very much of its time, I would say, in terms of the visual effects. So he's starting to have weird dreams of a creepy mystery man. And then they get another tape in the mail, and this time the tape shows not only the outside of the house, but actually like a sort of voyeuristic POV of someone walking through their house and videotaping them while they sleep, right? And they're freaked out about it, so they call the police. The police come over and they're like, "Yeah, that is weird." And they ask them some fairly normal questions about like who might have done this, if you guys own a video camera, etc. Then they sort of walk around the house. They're looking for.
Oh, real quick, when they ask, "Do you own a video camera?" a very important line comes up, right? Because Bill Pullman's character says, Patricia Arquette. What's her name again? Renee. Renee says, "Oh yeah, he hates those. No, we don't own a video camera. He hates video cameras." And they kind of follow up on that. They go, "Why?" And he says, "I like to remember things as I remember them, not as they actually happened." Which is interesting, yes. Considering.
Oh, that's really good. Now that you know, now that I know where it goes.
Yeah.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He prefers to live in his,
in his fantasy
version
worlds,
of reality,
rather than
exactly
with objective fact.
Yes. So after the police come by and they inspect the house, and they're like, we'll keep you posted. We'll look into it, but they don't really have anything yet. We go to an LA house party, right? And there's naked ladies jumping into the pool and all that sort of stuff. Patricia Arquette is dancing with the guy with a little pencil thin mustache, right? And he's kind of all over her, right? So this is very much the sort of jealousy bit where not only does he feel like his wife isn't satisfied by him, he suspects that she has been maybe messing around with this other guy, right?
Yeah.
What's his name? Armand or something like that?
Oh, yeah. The actor's name is Balthazar, which is just beautiful. Especially for, like, nobody has ever looked more like a Balthazar, I would argue.
Anyway, I can't remember his character's name. Doesn't matter. So they go to a party.
He's got a weird pencil thin mustache. He's like your typical skeezy Hollywood swinger type, It's pretty. I like it. I like.
Someone said all women before makeup. That's good. Pretty good. So they're at the house party. She's, kind of dancing with this other guy. He's like, "Hey, will you go get me another drink?" And then this guy's sort of all over her, right? So obviously he's feeling the jealousy because, he's cooked. It's over for him.
He goes already convinced that she is cheating on him. That
understandable based on the evidence as we see.
Well, based on what he's seeing, but
yes.
Remember, he doesn't like to remember things as they are. So
yeah. So here's the question, because Topaz Dude in the chat sort of implied that this stuff all basically really happens, And then there's the middle sequence that's all kind of a fantasy he invents for himself to distance himself from what he does, right?
Yes. And then the end is him, like, you know, like being executed in the electric chair as he's driving away.
Yes,
Is the idea.
but
Yeah.
how much of what we're seeing in this first sequence is reliable?
That's a good question. I don't like is how reliable do we really think it is? Because he's sort of living. The idea too is that he's sort of living in a fugue state. Like he doesn't remember.
It's out of time and he's just sort of trapped in this weird loop, right? And so like his days are kind of repetitive in this first section of the movie as well. And then so he's getting tapes that kind of like hint at what he's going to do. At one point, she isn't watching, but he watches a tape of himself murdering her, right?
Yeah.
But that comes as a surprise to him. So like that's not what literally happened. You know what I mean? Like there's it's a little
it's very I don't know. It's a little loose and it's very O.J. Simpson, right? Like he claims
the juice is on the loose. Is that what you're saying?
Well, he claimed that he blacked out, right? Like that he doesn't he doesn't remember anything obvious. Like there's a lot of that playing into it, right?
Sure. Yeah, so this stuff mostly literally happened, right? He saw that his girlfriend or wife was most likely cheating on him with this skeezy guy. He's at the house party. He goes to the bar and gets himself 2 whiskeys and he downs them both. And then he sees the mystery man. Mystery man eyes him up and then he walks straight to him and all the sound from the rest of the party immediately dies out. And it's one of my favorite parts of
this
David
is
Lynch's
maybe one of the most iconic scenes in any David Lynch movie. Like it's
so cool, man.
It's really cool.
So, like he just walks up and then whoop, all that sound just kind of fades out abruptly. And then hold on, let me pull up the script because I want to get the exact words for this bit.
We've met before, haven't we?
Yeah, I want to get because it's really, really good. Really, really good. So hold the people over while I pull this up real quick. Boop, 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 boop.
Yeah, I mean, it's the way that the sound, and so the soundtrack in the back is playing a sort of like Baldiamenti-ized version of. It sounds very similar to like that song "Love Is Kind of Love Is Kind of Crazy" with a spooky little girl like you, with a little bit of extra jazz tones, like jazzed up a little. It's a really haunting sort of melody that's playing as he goes to do this, and then it all drops away when this guy walks up to him, and like no eyebrows, pale face, black, like all dressed in black, just very eerie and off-putting. And it really hits, man. It's really
so let's
good.
And also the shot. It's the shot they use. It's a very tight close-up of his face, uncomfortably close, and like looking slightly down at him, I would say also.
Yes.
And his lack of eyebrows and his general creepy demeanor. Yeah, he's very much like a demonic Satan-esque figure, whether he's literally the devil or we'll get to that in a minute because we should get through some of the dialogue of the scene because it's really, really good. So he walks up and he says, "We've met before, haven't we?" Bull Pullman says, "I don't think so." He says, where was it you think we met?" He says, "At your house. Don't you remember?" He says, "No, I don't." "Are you sure?" He's like, "Of course. As a matter of fact, I'm there right now." "What do you mean? You're where right now?" He says, "At your house." He goes, "That's fucking crazy, man." Just such a great response. He says he pulls out his phone, he opens it up. It's got a little flip to it, which is great. It's got like an early cell phone. And he hands it to him. He says, "Call me. Dial your number. Go ahead." So he dials it and he says, "I told you I was here."
Yeah.
He says, "How'd you do that?" And he says, "Well, ask me." And he says, "How'd you get inside my house?" And he says, "You invited," this is the important bit, right? "You invited me. It is not my custom to go where I'm not wanted." At which point he asks, "Who are you?" And then he cackles. Both him right in front of him at the party and him on the phone. They cackle, and there's a great sort of like chorusing effect to the sound there as they both kind of cackle at the same time. And then he says, "Give me back my phone." He says, "It's been a pleasure talking to you." And then he walks away, right? So he's something that he's invited in. So the first
Yeah.
thought is that he's the sort of resentment and jealousy and anger and everything that leads to him killing his wife, right? He's the sort of demonic force, the
All of
representation of his
the
hatred. Yes,
darker
exactly.
aspects of himself, like that have kind of like, and this is something that I find very like the surreal imagery that he uses in this movie kind of help with this a little bit too, right? So one of the recurring images, because this monologue or this dialogue is going to recur a couple of times. Um,
Yes.
and one of the images that recurs is a cabin, like a little house that is like it's blown up and on fire, but it's going in reverse. So it's like it's always shown sort of at like the worst, like once the worst thing in the narrative has happened, it's shown going backwards, right? So once he's been arrested for the murder of his wife and he's waiting to be executed, that's the first time that we see the shot of it kind of repairing itself. And he talks in this scene about having been let into his house, and generally houses have been used in sort of in literary devices and representations of like your own mind, right? It's like your house in you're keeping your house in order, you're keeping your mind, like tidy and neat and everything. And so
Sure.
he's invited this aspect of darkness and evil into his house. He's talking to him while he's in the house already, right? And we're seeing the explosion of it. We're seeing like the end result, and every time before one of the narratives restarts, we see it repair itself. So it goes from being destroyed to repaired to destroyed to repaired, which it goes along with the idea of like the infinite loops of reliving this torment, the psychological torment, and the awful thing that he's done.
And also, yeah, so there's the house he lives in real life, the actual house he was in where he murdered his wife.
Yes.
But the sort of the shack, the cabin as it's called, is just this random, very small, kind of run down little shack in the middle of the desert. You know what I mean? It's like it's so isolated and removed from everything around it, and it's not very nice and everything like that. And it's like almost more of a representation of like the sort of like his very, what would you say? Because like that keeps getting destroyed and repaired, but there's something very unnatural and strange about that little
Yeah.
house. Like that it's
It's
evocative.
really yeah, evocative is a good word, right? It's like it's unnatural. It doesn't belong, right? It's out in the middle of nowhere. It's got like there's a couch with like
Isolated.
yeah, it's very
Yeah.
isolated. There's no roads leading to it. It's surrounded by darkness, and yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
and it's on
it's very weird.
it's yeah, and so like that's like what's being rebuilt every time he like convinces himself like that he loops again and like plays into this fantasy where he can pretend he didn't do it.
Yeah.
So when the weird devil man, mystery man comes up to him and is like, the first thing he says is, "We've met before, haven't we?" And he's like, "No, I don't think so." He's like, "Are you sure about that?" you know, like, "Are you still pretending?" Or
Yeah.
like, are you ready to or are you ready to face what you did, essentially?
Yeah.
And so when we see the mystery man later in the movie, he's the one holding the video camera, right? And so what we know about Bill Pullman's character is that he prefers to live in the version of what he imagined happened instead of how things actually went. He doesn't like video cameras because he doesn't like video cameras and film in general because they sort of make concrete what actually happened objectively. At least that's how he views it, right? And he doesn't
Yes.
like that because that doesn't allow him to, fantasize about how things actually went and how his life actually is, right? So there's a guy there who's a weird mystery man. He's obviously ominous and he's kind of evil coded, but there's something like he's the guy who's like holding him to account. Essentially, you can imagine him kind of like some sort of, supernatural figure, maybe a bit morally ambiguous actually, who's just kind of like holding him to account and causing him to loop and testing him like, "Are you ready now? Are you ready to face what you did and own up to it?" It's like, "We've met before, haven't we?" It's like, "No, are you sure?" And he's the one holding the video camera. He's the one taking the video at the end. He's the one kind of like making objective how things happened here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
He's the one who has the knowledge of it. And so one of it he's the one who's holding the video camera, and on the tape where we see the murder that he's committed, it's a bird's eye view of the room, and it's kind of coming down in. So that's sort of what this mystery man has, that it's the part of him that understands there is an objective reality. It's almost like his conscience or some form, like you could read it as the devil too, right? Like the devil sort of trying to torment him with what is like, hey, look, this is what you did, are you ready to own up to it? Are you ready to see it? Are you ready to look at it, in full faced,
Yeah, I wouldn't describe that. Doesn't really, like, that's not the devil to me. You know what I mean? If anything, the devil would encourage just the sort of fantasies, right? And just living in that. You know what I mean? It feels more like
well, because he has more of a Buddhist concept of it, right? So it's more of like an attempt at like, somebody mentioned in the chat earlier, mentioned Crime and Punishment, right? Where like you go through hell to bring yourself to heaven, by essentially, like, you have to admit to the wrong that you did before you can begin to make up for it, and before your soul can sort of like start to recover. Otherwise it drives you insane.
Sure, I'm just saying he doesn't strike me as the devil.
Not yeah, I mean, maybe not. I think
so one thing I just learned from Topaz Dude in the chat, because I had no idea, that Robert Blake, who plays the mystery man, killed his wife in real life.
Well, yeah, in the same way that OJ did. He was acquitted. Wink. Yeah, we don't know who did it.
According to Wikipedia, in 2001, Blake took Bonnie Lee Backley out for dinner at an Italian restaurant in California. She was fatally shot in the head while sitting in his vehicle, which was parked on a side street around the corner from the restaurant. Blake said he had returned to the restaurant to collect a pistol he had left there and had not been present when the shooting took place. The pistol Blake left in the restaurant was found and determined by police not to be the murder weapon. So, yeah. Well, that's interesting. That is an interesting coincidence.
Second gun.
Yeah, after this movie, not before.
Yes.
I did not know that. That is news to me. That he was
this guy maybe killed his wife. He was found liable for her death in a civil suit afterward, much like O.J. Simpson, funnily enough.
Would you look at that? Interesting. Well,
time is a flat circle. It's it's like a spiral. Every rung is just a little higher than the other.
Well, that is unfortunate if true, because he's very good in this movie. He's very, very good in this movie. Anyway, so after meeting the mystery man, some sort of weird, maybe ambiguous supernatural figure, he goes over to meet the pencil mustache guy and be like, "Hey, who was that?" And he says, "Oh, I don't know who he is. He was a friend of Dick Laurent's." And so then he's hearing that name again, and he's like, "Dick Laurent, who's that?" He's like, "But Dick Laurent is dead, isn't he?" He's like, "He is? I didn't think you knew Dick." He's like, "How do you know he's dead?" I don't know him." Like, "Dick can't be dead. Who told you he was dead?" And then he's like, "We got to get out of here. We got to go home." Right? So the fantasy world, or like the lies he's told himself, or like maybe something's creeping in, right? Something is breaking the safety of the little illusion loop. Some memory, some trace of the fact that he's stuck in this loop of his past experience is sort of breaking in here, right? But we don't really know what it is yet. The next time we get a tape it's of his wife being brutally killed, right?
Yes.
She's like
She's dismembered. Her
she's
arms and
dismembered,
legs are
yeah.
chopped off. Yeah.
Yeah, she's been obliterated, if you will, and the tape that shows it is again from sort of like an eye level POV of someone else. He's not videotaping himself doing it. And we do this really interesting thing where we see it in the video camera and then we see it happen for real, which
Yeah.
is really interesting. But then we cut straight from that to him being arrested and put in prison for the murder. I was like, oh, okay, that's an interesting twist. Like, where's the movie going to go from here? Some very interesting and strange directions. But it seems to be pretty heavily implied at this point in the movie, not knowing where things are going. That like, oh, I guess he killed his wife. What's weird about it is that, like, what is the video camera perspective? That's the mystery that hasn't been solved yet, right?
Yeah.
And so then he's put in prison, and he's hanging out in prison. You know, there are a couple scenes of like him feeling sick and the doctor's not really knowing what to do
He has a
about it.
terrible headache and he can't sleep, so they
Yes.
like they pound him full of drugs. They're like, "Oh, you'll sleep now," which is like again
Yes.
another interesting little thing because it's basically saying like, yeah, he's like entering the dream, right? Like we're gonna load him up with drugs and he can enter his like dream world fantasy here, right? You'll
Yes.
sleep now.
Because everything's starting to crack, right? And so it's like, oh, we got to reboot.
Yeah.
And so he's being put back to sleep, and there's like a blue light that shines on him from above. That kind of fits with the like, going to sleep, going underwater sort of thing. We get the imagery of the shack in the middle of the desert that's blown up, kind of reforming back together. And then we see crazy shots driving down the highway, but this time they pull over and there's a man standing on the side of the highway. And this is probably some of the weirdest imagery in the movie out of context. There's a random guy by the side of the road. There's a girlfriend or someone behind him yelling his name and family in the background, but he's like lit up by headlights. And we zoom in and see a whole bunch of crazy flashes of strange things. We cut to the next day, I guess, and a guard is coming to open his cell and finds that, oh no, that's not Bill Pullman in the cell. That's this new guy.
Who the hell is that?
Who is this? Who the heck is even that? And so they're like, that's strange. I quite like this part of the story. Like, this was the moment I was like, oh, that's an interesting little development that like somehow magically, supernaturally, this random guy has replaced Bill Pullman in his cell. Bill Pullman is gone. We don't know where he is. And this guy, we don't know how he got in there. And so because he's not supposed to be in there, I think he was in prison before, but he had long since been let out. Isn't that right?
Yeah, he was arrested
like
for
that?
something. Yeah. Petty crime,
Yeah, but
nothing like crazy. He shouldn't be on death row kind of thing.
no, he should not be on death row, but they don't know how he got here. So the police are like, they have to let him out, but they're like going to follow him for the rest of the movie, which I quite like. It's just really interesting on a literal level. If something like that happened, that is how I imagine they'd handle it. I'd be like, what the fuck? Like, how did you get in here? And he's like, I have no idea. And then they're like, well, we can't keep him here. So I guess we got to let him go, but we're going to like watch his ass like a hawk for the rest of time, presumably to figure out how the hell this happened and where Bill Pullman is and all that sort of stuff. So he's being sort of tailed by the cops for the rest of the movie, which is a fun little noirish detail to the story. And so then we see this new guy whose name I can never remember. Pete. Right. Pete is the sort of younger, well, if we take what Hugh and Topaz Dude have said in the chat, this is the sort of fantasy version of Bill Pullman. He's younger. He's sort of reliving his sort of idealized version of how he met Patricia Arquette.
Yeah, something like so.
Is that what we're going with?
That's what we're gonna. So as this comes from Patricia Arquette's interpretation of it, which I quite like. She says it's sort of a movie about looking at women through the eyes of a misogynist. He's totally obsessed with her, can't love her enough, can't have her to himself enough, can't kill her enough times. He doesn't quite trust her, even though she is his wife. He kills her, but can't remember it. Then he recreates himself as a virile young man to meet her again. And now she actually wants to fuck him, and she is in love with him. But even in this version, she's a dirty porn whore. In this man's mind, a woman is always the monster, no matter what. So it's sort of he starts off with this idea. And
okay, so I have to take some exception to that, but I guess it really depends on whether the first part of the movie is real either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if the first part of the movie is real, then it really seems like she's cheating on him. You know what I mean? Like, or at the very least, she takes no care for the fact that it really looks like she's cheating on him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that guy's like all over her right in front of him, right in front of her husband or whatever. And she's like, "Oh, can you go get us some more drinks?" And then she keeps dancing with him. And then when they have sex, she seems very much disinterested and all that sort of stuff, right? So, like, is that stuff real, or is that part of his psyche? Like, is that unreliable as well?
I would say she almost gets it, right? Like, I think she is very clearly cheating on him in the first part of the movie. I don't think
that's what it really seems like.
Yes. Yeah, I like it's a little bit in the same way of like Mulholland Drive, right? Where like the actual Rita is kind of just a flighty bitch. And
yeah, yes.
But like and she's not really taking care with the like she doesn't really take her relationship with Betty or Diane seriously, right?
Yes.
It's sort of
kind of casually cruel about it.
It's kind of the same thing happening here. I don't think I do not think that this is all an unreliable narrator who is just like he just hates women. But
I don't think
it is like him constructing a fantasy where he gets to sort of be the man that, you know, he thinks she wants, right? Or that like the man
that she's cheating on him with.
Yeah, the man that she's cheating on him with. And even then he can't suppress the anger and the hurt at, you know, at having been part of it, right? Like so
the fantasy doesn't work because ultimately, like, he's trying to devise a way where he can still have her and he can be perfect and he can be the kind of guy that she does actually want. But like deep down, he can't suppress the feelings of how it actually was in real life, which was that she had a past that he wasn't comfortable with and that she was probably cheating on him. And so even in this fantasy version, like that sort of creeps back in where she has a particularly unsavory pornographic past. And ultimately, even at the moment where like they're finally going to consummate, she rejects him, right? Because the fantasy basically just can't sustain itself because he knows deep down that she didn't really love him. Because I think that is really what happened in the movie. You know what I mean? That's what happened in reality. So no, Patricia, I'm afraid I don't agree.
It's not an unreliable narrator thing, but I think you're almost there. You're so close. It's
yeah. I don't think he's a misogynist. I think he's a man who goes crazy with jealousy, right? Essentially.
Exactly.
You know, like it's because in the normal world, she is just the one who's wronging him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
But he is tormented by the fact that he brought that it brought him to the point of committing a brutal murder.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, he doesn't have a great relationship with women in general, but but I guess what I'm taking exception to is the idea that
she's perfectly innocent in either
in the main one, in the main real timeline.
Yeah. Or in the other timeline where she kind of like cheats on the guy, the mob boss she's with a young mechanic, you know, a young virile mechanic. Yeah.
Yeah, she's you know, she's not very faithful in either version. That's for sure. So yeah, we're introduced to the young guy who is fresh out of prison. We don't waste too much time on how he ended up in prison, like because this is all just kind of a fantasy. It doesn't really matter. it's just like an
The
interesting,
idea is
weird,
like,
like
oh wow,
time loop
wouldn't
thing.
it be crazy if I just was a different person, the wrong person, and they
Hmm.
had to release me? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He goes back to his mechanic's shop and he runs into
Richard Pryor.
God, what am yes, Richard Pryor. Thank you. Uh, and we basically learned that he is just the best mechanic ever. He's the Gary Stu of
Yes,
mechanics.
he's got the
Everyone since
hands.
Yeah, he's got the magic touch, and ever since he's been gone for, I guess, being in prison briefly, everyone's been asking about him, waiting for him to come back because he's just the goddamn best mechanic this side of the Mississippi, right? And so, a rich man in a nice car comes to see him, and he's like, "Hey, come take a ride with me," right? He insists,
I
right?
hear something I don't like. Yeah,
Yes, I hear something I don't like in my car. Come take a ride with me. And he presses him on it. He insists, right? So they're driving through the Hollywood Hills, and the mechanic hears something. He's like, "Pull over," and they pull over, and he takes a wrench to a couple small little screws, does like very minor adjustments, and that fixes the problem. And then after that, the car is running like an absolute dream, right? He's just the best mechanic you've ever seen. He's got the gift.
yeah,
So as they're
exactly.
driving through the hills, there's a guy that's tailgating them, and the rich guy who's what's the rich guy's character's name?
Mr. Eddie.
Mr. Eddie. That's
But
the one.
it's
Mr.
Mr. Eddie, but it is Dick Laurent. That's the yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Eddie driving through the Hollywood Hills in his very nice car that's just had the perfect magic tune-up that he needs, is being tailgated by a guy who's driving too close to him, and Mr. Eddie freaks the fuck out and drives him off the road.
Gives a
He
rant that would
pulls
make Dennis Hopper proud.
he pulls him out of the car. You know what? Let's go through the rant because it's really, really fun.
It is really. I mean, it's Robert Lozier doing a Dennis Hopper impression. Really, is what it comes across to me as when he's doing.
Mm-hmm. So he gets behind him and he says, like, that cocksucker, like, doing what I think he's doing. This is where mechanical excellence and horsepower pays off. And so he's like,
He lets the guy
so
pass him first, and then he says that,
yeah, and then he runs him off the road. He runs him off the road, and then he pulls him out of the car and gets him right in his face. He goes, "Don't you ever fucking tailgate, ever." He says, "Tell him you won't tailgate, ever." He says, "I won't ever." He's like, "Do you know how many fucking car lengths it takes to stop a car at 35 miles an hour? 6 fucking car lengths." So if I had to stop suddenly, you would have hit me. I want you to get a driver's manual. I want you to study that motherfucker. I want you to obey the goddamn rules. And he starts ranting about how many people were killed on the highway and all that sort of stuff. It's like, tell me you're going to get a manual. He says, I'll get a manual. He says, fucking idiot. He says, hey, man, I'm sorry about that, Pete, but tailgating is one thing I cannot tolerate.
It's so funny, man. Like, it's so crazy and over the top. Like the way reading it does not do it justice. It's practically unintelligible when he's screaming in this guy's face. It's fucking hilarious.
Really good. It's a really fun rant. Capital. This is Patricia Arquette talking, the same idiot who in her Oscar speech thinks multimillionaire women don't get paid enough. Yeah, yeah. Actors are really not smart people on the whole. I find them more often than not, especially when it comes to political and social issues, just incredibly retarded. There's a clip that was going around recently of the British or maybe Welsh, I don't remember where she's from, but the actress who plays Deirdre in Andor ranting about Palestine, talking about how like Palestine is the hole in the Death Star, in that like it's like the one weakness in the whole system. So if you hit the the hole in the Death Star, it blows the whole thing up. People are like, what are you talking about?
What is the Death Star in this instance? The Arab world? Like,
no, I think the Death Star in this
take overall, honestly.
I don't think that's what she meant by it, but it did sound a little bit like if we just blow up Palestine, it'll solve the problem. She meant the opposite, of course. She meant the opposite of that. But She didn't phrase it very well. And also, just like, can we stop trying to compare modern political conflicts to Star Wars, please? I know you were in Star Wars, but still, you gotta stop. You have to stop. Or it's like anytime Mark Ruffalo opens his mouth, and just
Yeah,
like, this is
Jesus
why
Christ. Yeah,
you
this is
shouldn't listen to actors about literally anything. Even the ones who say things you agree with. It's just as a rule, don't listen to
even a
actors.
broken clock is right twice a day, you know.
You know what? We've talked before about how Disney didn't used to credit the voice actors in his movies, right? Um, and old Hollywood used to hide their actors from like who the actors really were from the public. They were very protective of the actors, and they had PR machines around them to prevent real people from realizing just how crazy actors were. And I think we should bring that back.
Yeah.
I think we should protect the rest of us
Yeah.
from what actors actually think about anything. I think the world would be a better place. R is for Robert Loggia.
O is for oh my God, it's Robert Loggia. B for by God, it's Robert Loggia.
Anyway,
that gets the E for everybody loves Robert Loggia. R for Robert Loggia. T is in Tim. Look over there. It's Robert Loggia. Space. Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't need to. The world would be a better place if we didn't hear the opinions of actors themselves. Even when we were talking about Death Becomes Her, and Goldie Hawn was talking about the original ending, and she was like, "No, it's so much better. It's so much deeper." I'm like, "No, it's
this
not.
This is why you're not a writer. This is why you're an actor.
This is why we don't let actors write the movies. All right." We've seen what happens. All right, we don't need to go through that again. Anywho, Robert Loggia rants at this guy for tailgating. It's pretty hilarious. Then Pete goes to meet up with his girlfriend, who's actually closer to his age, that he's fooling around with. She is clearly trying to get him to show a bit more than just lustful interest in her.
Yes.
Like, trying to get him to say I love you and all that sort of stuff. And he's, fooling around with her in the car, and the cops are kind of watching him. Later, the cops are watching him again as he's fooling around with Patricia Arquette. and one of the cops says, "Man, this guy gets more pussy than a toilet seat." Pretty funny.
Such a funny line.
Yeah, like I think people don't give David Lynch enough credit for like his comedic writing. Like, I think everyone knows that there's a lot of funny stuff in Twin Peaks and some of his other movies, but like, he's a pretty good comedic writer.
Yeah.
He's pretty hilarious. Like, and that's not like the most original joke ever, but like in the context of this movie, it really comes out of nowhere in a really funny way. And the specificity of the tailgating rant and how angry he is about it is also really funny.
Yeah, well, and like it's really funny because that's the only thing we're gonna see of like how terrifying this guy is, right? Like, he's a mob boss or something like that, right? But we never see him kill anybody or do anything like that. Like, the big moment is this guy tailgated him, so he gets in his face with a gun and yells at him to buy a driver's manual so that he's not going to tailgate anymore, and he'll understand how to give proper following distance on the road.
So after hooking up with this girl in his car out on the street, we are back in the mechanic's shop, and we see Jack Nance in his little bit part. And Jack Nance is enjoying himself listening to some saxophone squawk away. And Pete doesn't like it.
Doesn't like it. It's giving him a bad headache, so because it's bringing the reality back into the fantasy, because he's remembering that saxophone squawking that he was doing at the beginning of the movie. Which, one of the first things that I thought was, she was like, "It's okay that I'm not going to come to the club tonight," and he's just like, "Well, what are you going to do instead?" And she's like, "Stay home, read." And he kind of laughs at her, like, he's like, "Read? What are you going to read?" As if she can't read at all, right? Which is kind of funny to me. But then, like, they get to the club, and he's playing this, like, improv alto saxophone solo, right? And there's, like, flashing lights and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know that I would want to do that every night either, man. Like,
Yeah, a bit seizure inducing,
yeah,
and also you're just kind of squawking. It's just kind of a bunch of noise. It's
yeah.
not really very sophisticated or melodic as far as jazz goes. So
Like, it's
yeah,
a good
I don't need to
improv.
see that every night.
It's a good
Is
improv.
it good improv?
It's a once in a like it's a good experimental. It's like a bitches brew kind of thing. Every now and then you might be in the mood for it, right?
Yeah, I'm rarely in the mood for bitches brew, Miles Davis.
Yeah, I am more a quartet kind of guy or quintet kind of guy. But every now and then, a weird freaky bitches brew song might
Yeah, not
capture my
every night
attention.
though. Not
Nah,
every
every
night.
night? No, fuck that. Absolutely
You
fuck
know,
that.
one imagines she has been to that club to see him perform a great many times.
They're married.
And it's just
She's been there a
yeah,
lot. Like he's not
like,
doing it. Like
no.
she's like, yeah, you say it's different, but like I don't know, man. Like, every time it just sounds the same. Like
You just gotta feel the music, man.
you practice
So
it, but it doesn't sound like you're getting better.
so after getting into a very brief argument with Jack Nance about the squawking saxophone on the radio, he sees blonde wig Patricia Arquette.
Still
And
bad bangs though.
yeah. Yeah, not the best hairdos in this movie for her, I must say. Not a fan. But I love the cool old car she's in, and I love the
Yeah.
general vibe, right? And so that's the first time he sees her, right? And Robert Loggia is also there. I don't remember what he says to him at
He
this
basically
point.
says like I'm gonna leave the Cadillac here. When do you think it can be done? He says, okay, you want to pick it up tonight or tomorrow? He goes, oh, if you think you'll get it done by tonight, I'll come by later tonight. And so
Yeah,
then she shows up later that night, and has
to pick
no
up the
interest
car.
in picking up the car. Actually,
Yes,
she shows up in a
shows up to
cab.
just be like, "Hey, can I take you out?"
Yeah, let's go fuck.
Well, first she says, "How'd you like to take me to dinner?" And he says, "I don't know." And then she says, "Why don't I take you to dinner?"
Yeah, he says, I don't think that's
Look,
a
I
good
don't think this is
idea.
a very good. Yeah.
So she said, I got to go call myself another cab. You have a car in the shop right here, but that's fine. She goes to
Yeah, but
call
she's
another
just like,
cab.
"Fine, if you won't take me out to dinner, I guess I'll take another taxi back home." And he's like, "Okay, fine, I'll take you out to dinner." And then they go to have sex, and then the cop in the police car is like, "Man, this guy gets more pussy than a toilet seat." And so we get the sex scene, and then we get a couple sex scenes in a row. We
Quite a
get
few.
their sort of
They are
tryst, if you
fucking like
will.
rabbits.
Yes, they certainly are. Um, and there's some great shots where like she's calling him on the phone, and we only see that like sort of Star Trek lighting, like that like thick band of light, and everything else is in darkness,
Mm,
like across
yeah,
her mouth.
yeah.
It's very noir. It's fun. It's great. It's a lot of great visual stuff in this movie. And then he's in a hotel room hooking up with her, and he's like waiting for her or something, but there's like spiders on the wall and
Oh,
like
it's a Black Widow.
bugs.
Yeah, it's a Black Widow on the wall, and there's moths trapped
Yes.
in the ceiling light, and it's just like that. I love that imagery, right? Like
Yeah, it's really cool.
like he's just stuck being dazzled by this fantasy, and like that creeping anger
Red.
and rage that he has towards her is like climbing up the wall to get him every time, right? Like I love it. I love it.
So
Yeah, I mean, like,
he's
so
driving away.
it ends up getting to the point where she calls him to be like, "Hey, we can't meet up anymore, or we need to take things a little easy." Mr. Eddie, I don't know if he knows, but I think he suspects. Um, he, Mr. Eddie comes to visit him at the shop, and he says like, "Hey, you know what I would ever do to anybody who I found out was making out with my best gal, that blonde chick I brought in the Cadillac? I'd shove this gun so far up their ass, they'd taste it in their mouth. And you know what I'd do then? Then I'd blow his brains out." It's like,
Like, got it. Message received.
yes,
Thank you.
understood. They're still gonna fuck though.
Yes. Then he meets up with Patricia Arquette again, and the conversation of her past comes up because he wants to know how she ended up with this mob boss guy, right? He because like At first, the fantasy is nice because he's on the other end. He's the one that she's cheating with instead of being the one who's cheated on. But eventually, it's like, how'd you end up with this guy anyway? What kind of girl are you? Essentially, is the
Yeah.
question. And she reveals that, he's involved with some, porn. Essentially, he's in the porn industry, among other things. He makes like, I don't know. They seem rather like snuff films in some ways. They're pretty,
Yeah,
you know.
they're pretty fucked up. Yeah, it's
Yes, and she kind of insists that like, no, I didn't really do any of that. However, I
when it's all
did like
repetitive
when
dialogue too, right? Because she talks to Bill Pullman earlier in the movie when they're leaving the party after he talks with the mystery man, and he asks like, "How did you even meet that little guy with the pencil mustache?" And she says the same things, right? Like, "Oh,
yeah,
somebody told
I've
me he
known
had
him
a
from a
job."
while ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's creeping back in there too. But this is like, you know, she was involved with well, she says she wasn't involved with any of the like the porn stuff, right? But then she kind of gets she tells the story in such a way that like she was held at gunpoint into undressing and then sort of forced to have sex with Robert Loggia in front of a room full of people, but the gun
yeah, his
isn't.
goons or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, but then he kind of the gun is removed by the time she goes up to to fuck him, and then
Yeah,
he takes issue with this. He's like, "Oh, what, you didn't run away, huh? What, you liked it?" And that's sort of like, again, the anger kind of seeping in, right? Like
yeah.
he doesn't appreciate this, and we end up finding
No,
out that she was lying, right? Like she's not.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah. So the fantasy can't sustain itself for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons is that like he cannot come to terms with like her past, but
yeah,
and even in the fantasy version, because it's like, okay, so the fantasy version is now he's the one that he's the young buck that she's cheating on him with, right? But even in that, it's like, yeah, but what kind of person are you that would get involved with this evil mob boss guy? What kind of person are you? Like were you really forced to do it, or did you kind of enjoy it and all that sort of stuff? And all that sort of jealousy comes back, and the anger he felt in real life. Like, so the fantasy basically just can't sustain itself. And he goes. I remember how he goes over there, like because they go over to the mansion and he meets the pencil mustache guy who makes the porn. And then he gets the corner of a table through his head. But
yeah.
try to remember how that comes about
Well, she
exactly.
says that she knows a guy who they can rob, right, to get some
Right, right,
money.
right, right. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because, he has this fantasy he's not really comfortable with her past, right? Being involved in all this stuff, but part of him is like kind of turned on by it, but the other part, is feeling jealous. But she convinces him to stay essentially by being like, look, we can run away together. I'm willing to leave all of that behind. You and me will rob someone that'll have all the money we need to go run away to wherever we want to go. And so they're going to rob this guy who was involved in all this seedy porn making and everything. And it's the guy with the pencil thin mustache from the very beginning of the movie. So they go to rob him, and and they like end up getting into like a brief little skirmish, and then he ends up falling forward and is like the corner of a glass, like must be a very hard glass table,
yeah.
like impales him through the head. It's
It's pretty funny, man. I really like.
it is funny the way it happens because it's just so strange.
Yeah. And so then another question, about the literal happenings of this movie is, do we think that this really happened? Right? Because eventually, so like one of the things that he sees in this fantasy version, right? Because yeah, like it happens and then they keep robbing him. There's a really funny moment where Patricia Arquette starts like trying to pull his rings off and she can't get it, and she's like, "Ah, fuck." Like she's really struggling with
Yeah.
it. That got a laugh out of me. But as he's looking around and kind of coming to terms with what happened, he sees a photo with both like the redhead Patricia Arquette and the blonde one side by side with this guy and Mr. Eddie. And he kind of has this, like revelation.
Like they're twins or
yeah,
sisters.
like they're twins. Yeah. Later on, when the police are investigating the murder scene, they find that same picture, but it's just Pullman's wife version of Patricia Arquette in the picture. And they say, like, oh shit, like, yeah, look at that, that's his wife. Where we've got his prints all over this place, right? Like so do we think that he like it's a double homicide? That bit there is like kind of real.
Oh, so do we think that Bill Pullman in the real version of events
also killed this guy? Yeah.
Also killed this guy? Yeah. I think I do.
I think that makes a lot of sense, I would say.
I think it does make a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about it until right now, but I think that does make sense that he would have done that.
Yeah, because we don't really watch the murder happening. So like not overall.
No, we don't watch
really.
either of the murders happening. Yeah. No.
So I think that it makes a lot of sense that like they find like they arrest him for killing his wife, and then they also find out that he killed this guy too.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, it's like OJ.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but in the fantasy version, they're going to rob this guy so they can, you know, because he doesn't need the money and he's a degenerate piece of crap involved in all this shady business. So we're going to rob this guy and then we're going to go run off together. They accidentally kill him in the process. I suppose that's part of the fantasy, right? That he kills this guy in a way that's kind of like funny and humiliating, but doesn't like is not really intentional. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I suppose. Like, and so then he sees the photo of the two of them together, like, oh, like he sees the redhead and the blonde version of Patricia Arquette. And that's part of what, like, it's the cracks that are forming, right?
Yeah.
And the cracks start to form, and then literally the camera does this thing. I assume it's using some sort of lens where you can adjust the glass, the angle of the glass to make it sort of warp and distort the
it's a classic,
there's a lot of cool stuff in
this.
It's
a classic Lynch trick, you know. Like he's
there's a lot of things that became sort of standard artsy, weird, surreal things after him that he really sort of pioneered, and that's one of them. That like I very recently started rewatching Buffy, and season 1 of Buffy has a couple dream sequences of like Buffy's, you know, envisioning her upcoming death and all sorts of creepy things, and you know, a whole bunch of vampires running around, and it's shot kind of like an artsy student film, you know. It helps that it's on 16 millimeter, but some of this stuff that does is a lot like, you know, David Lynch surrealism, which because of David Lynch was a very popular thing for artsy film students of the time to do. So like some of the tricks that he does feel kind of like a cliche at this point, but they weren't then, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In the one where like the hallway and the relationship of like the vertical to the horizontal like distorts in a really interesting way based on like moving the plane of glass relative to the lens. You know, like that's cool. I like that a lot. And it's kind of, you know, things are being warped and distorted as his reality is breaking apart. He walks upstairs in the house, or is this back in the hotel? I can't remember. Where are they?
Well, okay, so what happens? What happens is what happens is they are in the hotel, or they are in the house. But when he walks upstairs and he's having this like sort of moment, he's kind of rolling his eyes up into his head the way that like Stanley Kubrick liked to have people do when they were supposed to be having like internal visions, right? He's walking
seizure kind of.
He's walking through the hallway, but it looks like a hotel hallway.
Yes. Yeah. And there are numbers on the doors, 25, 26. He opens 26 and he sees Patricia Arquette having sex
with pink hair or in like pink light. Yeah, having sex
with who is it at this point?
I can't remember.
It might have been so distorted you can't tell. Anyway, he like kind of comes back to reality and he goes back downstairs and he sees Patricia Arquette, who is like loading up a bunch of stolen goods in a bag, and she pulls out a gun and points it at him. And at first you think, oh no, is she turning on him? And then she's like, nope, I'm not turning on you. She like gives him the gun, but it's like this weird sort of like test thing of like, can't tell if you can trust her, sort of
Yeah.
thing. I can't, what did she say exactly there?
What's wrong? Don't you trust me? Is
Right,
basically.
that's what it is. Yeah. Uh, don't stick your dick in crazy, folks. That's the lesson here. Um, so then we get more like they're driving down the highway. They're going towards this like cabin in the woods, or not the woods, the desert, so they can hide out there before they go on to wherever Mexico, wherever they're going next. And they're driving like maniacs down the highway.
They
That's
have to
where
go to the cabin because she knows a fence who lives out there, so that and he's the guy they can sell all the stolen shit to get the passports and the money.
that's right.
Yeah.
And so we see more visions of the cabin being blown up and then like coming back together again.
Yeah. And this is right about the time where like so they get to the cabin, nobody's there. They fuck in the headlights, and then as she like he says a bunch of things like I want you, and she says like you'll never have me, and walks up back into the cabin.
Yes.
And when he
So
stands
they
back
finally
up, now it's Bill Pullman again.
Yes, exactly. I want to show one of these shots on screen of them fucking in the headlights. You don't worry, folks. You can't see anything that would get our stream
Yeah,
taken
don't
down
worry.
because of
Don't worry at all. You're not going to see
because of
anything.
the way it's shot. One of the shots is in the thumbnail. The other one we're about to show on screen. I love the way this is shot because it's overexposed. And so and film looks great overexposed. The digital does not look good overexposed, which is why so many things are so dim these days, because they err on the side of underexposing rather than overexposing. But overexposed film has this great sort of blown out halation glow to it that I really like. And also shooting them having sex this way in like the middle of this desert, so all you can see is like a little bit of dirt before the light completely falls off and a bunch of dust, and then it just kind of drops off into
Yeah,
darkness.
the way it
And
catches her
so
hair when like later on when she's
yeah,
on top and
we'll show
everything,
that.
like, it's
We'll show that
yeah.
too because it's really good. It's
It,
awesome. I think it looks
yeah.
great. I think it's like I like this like single source lighting, but it's blown out look. It's awesome.
Yeah.
This is a really cool vibey movie. Yeah, it's really
It's really
cool.
cool,
I
and then
like
it
it.
has like the thematic, consistency of being like this is where, like the light is being shined on the reality of the situation, right? So like that's it's just beautiful. It's a really well. This is where his like technical expertise really shines through, right? Like he really knows
Yeah.
how to use these techniques and make them very memorable. Oh, there is a nipple in that shot, by the way.
That's fine. You can't tell what it is. It's all grainy. No one, you
No
can't
way.
tell.
No way we get banned.
No way. That's such a great shot, though. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot of great technical and visual stuff in this movie. I do have one criticism of the way this film was put together. The focus kind of goes in and out in a lot of scenes in this movie. The focus pulling is not the best I've ever seen. There are some scenes where one of the characters is just a little soft. They didn't really nail the focus. And granted, that is a little bit harder to do in
Yeah.
film than it is in digital. In digital, obviously, you can monitor it and you can look before you roll and everything, and you kind of just have to measure things and have a really competent team to get it right. But there are definitely shots in this movie that are a little soft, where the focus kind of goes in and out as people are moving in a way that I thought was a little distracting and just maybe a little bit more amateurish than I would expect from a production of this size. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But
That's my minor gripe with the way it's
like
shot.
it's nowhere near as like as fucky in that way as Inland Empire, I would say. Inland Empire,
Yeah, Inland Empire. That's another level.
yeah, that's another level. Like
We'll
his,
talk about that
yeah.
movie someday.
Well, I mean, yeah, we're getting. That's the last of his like what people would call his like L.A. or like his California trilogy, I guess you could say.
Well,
Like
it's
there's
his last feature film.
yeah, there's like I guess it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't make any other feature films. There,
Yeah,
he was
probably
apparently
because
trying
of
to
because
get
of
one.
it.
Yeah, I can't imagine Inland Empire did very well.
Oh, I know it didn't.
Yeah, but yeah, it was his last feature film, 2006. apparently he was in the process of trying to get one made, or maybe it was like there were different reports that he was either like had a feature film he was trying to get made and struggling to find, funding for, or also like he was developing a TV show. There are all sorts of rumors like that. But then unfortunately he passed away. Rip David Lynch. It would have been cool to get another. It's kind of a shame that Inland Empire was his last movie. But then again, I'm not sure how great and a David Lynch movie would have been
As a
that late in his
concept,
career,
yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. As a concept, Inland
because I
Empire
did
has
not
always
like Twin
been
Peaks:
very
The Return a
fascinating.
lot.
And
Anywho,
yeah,
so they like I said, we have sex in front of the headlights, and then he says, "I want you," but she says, "You can never have me," and rejects him at the last minute. He stands up from the headlights, and now he's Bill Pullman again. At which point he sees the mystery man, like, "Hello, I'm here also." He goes up to the cabin, following the mystery man, and we finally see the inside of the cabin. And oh boy, is it creepy looking in there. There's like a really kind of dingy looking couch with plastic over it, and like a beat up red chair, and it's all kind of just dingy wood, and it's just dark overhead light. Yeah, it's creepy in there, man.
yeah.
And so
This is where we find out that the mystery man has been the one who's been holding the videotapes, or making the
holding the
videotapes,
video
holding the video
camera. Yeah,
camera
yeah, yeah.
the whole time. And he, he's filming him, and he comes to approach him, right? He reaches out his hand almost in a way of saying, like, "Are you ready? You ready to, like, finally accept this kind of thing?" And
Mhm.
Bill Pullman backs away, gets into the car, and drives off. He drives off to the Lost Highway Motel or Hotel, where
Where Mr. Ed,
yeah,
Dick Laurent.
Dick Laurent is dicking down Patricia Arquette.
Yes.
And
So essentially, no, he is not ready to face any of
yes,
this yet. He's still sort of like holding on to the fantasy and be like, no, 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 I have to get the guy, the ultimate bad guy. I have to take care of him. That'll solve this. Not face up to anything that he's done, but like, oh, if I just get rid of this evil guy who's like, I guess, sort of implied to be secretly
the whole
behind the scenes,
enterprise.
pulling all
Yeah,
the strings and all that sort of stuff. So he goes to confront him, gets into a fight with him, stabs him, or like slits his throat, uh, and kills him. Right?
yeah. Well, no,
Yeah.
slits his throat, and then
Yes.
they have a bit of dialogue, right? And the mystery man hands him the gun, or the mystery man shoots him. Actually, it's not Bill
Right.
Pullman's character. So he's still not putting the onus on himself, right? And I think that
Yes.
yeah, like he's not accepting the responsibility. It's always somebody else, or it's accidental, or like he doesn't remember it, right? Like that's the three big murders that happen. Is like the first one, he sees the tape of him murdering his wife, but he can't remember doing it. And then the second one is he tries to defend himself against this guy who dives at him, and he basically like dodges out of the way, and the guy flies into the corner of a glass table and impales himself on it. And then in this one,
Yeah.
he kidnaps Dick Laurent from the hotel room, and him and the mystery man drive him out to the desert, and the mystery man gives him a knife to slit his throat, and then the mystery man shoots him, and he, gets back in the car to go tell himself that Dick
The Dick
Laurent is
Laurent
dead.
is dead. Dick Laurent, yeah. And not before we get a couple visions of some of the creepy snuff porno films that they make.
Yeah, starring
That like,
Marilyn Manson.
yes, of course.
Again, yikes.
Yeah, a bit like Robert Blake. Cuts a little close to reality there. So then he goes. Okay, so he goes. We learn that as we loop back to the beginning of the movie, he is the one who came to the intercom and said that David Laurent is dead, and then he drives off. Right.
Yeah.
So what does that mean in terms of?
This part is where I sort of lose the this is where I sort of lose it a little bit on this one, right? Because
Because we'll rush ahead quickly to the finale. The very last thing we see is him driving off into the desert. Police are after him, and then while he's driving, as the sort of sun is coming up in the desert, essentially, or the sun is going down, actually,
yeah,
um,
it,
he
it,
kind of gets electrocuted to death inside of his car, and it's very much implied that that's him getting the electric chair for the murder, because it's set up earlier in the movie that he is on death row and going to be electrocuted to death for the double homicide. And so he is electrocuted in his car, and that's the very last thing that happens, and then the movie just sort of ends. But before we talk about anything else, so the Dick Laurent thing, him coming to the door and telling himself that Dick Laurent is dead. What is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. What is that? So there's and so this again, this is kind of where this movie. So I like it a lot. It doesn't quite hit the way Mulholland Drive does for me because of this ending bit where I can't tell. It feels a little clunkier in trying to like piece together exactly what's going on here. Like, is he just remembering this like right before he dies? Like, is this like his life flashing before his eyes in a dream kind of situation? I don't know. I don't know what this is. Is he trapped in a time loop? Is this like yeah.
Okay, so if we take as a given that he is sort of looping this experience over and over, where like he's in, he's sort of in denial about what he's going to do to his wife, but there are little tapes, because this is like a time loop of some sort. There are tapes that are clues of what he's going to do.
Yeah.
And it's like almost like giving him the opportunity to not do it, but he always does it. And then he does it, and then as he gets arrested, and he's like retreating into this fantasy world, for all the reasons we talked about already. But ultimately, that fantasy can't last, and eventually it cracks apart, and he sort of has to come back to reality. But he's always given this opportunity to face the reality of what he did, and maybe either repent or maybe own up to it, whatever it is. But he never does, and he always kind of retreats back, and so he loops. Right? Is coming to the door and coming to the intercom and saying Dick Laurent is dead, is that part of the loop, or is that some sort of indication that we're breaking the loop?
But yeah, is he accepting that like he So Topaz Dude says, with Laurent, I tend to think he's not real at all. He's a stereotype bad guy that you've got to save the girl from. Mystery Man is the one who kills him to get out of Fred's head. Now Fred can take I assume acceptance of what he's done.
I don't think he does accept what he's done.
I don't know. Yeah. I think because he is telling himself that this guy's dead, but it's tying back to the beginning where somebody has told him that, or somebody has told him, or he's heard through something that somebody named Dick Laurent is dead. Right? Like, this is. I don't think he accepts that what he's done, and I think that like the idea of so he's running away at the end, right? Like the cops are chasing him down the road through the desert in his car, and then he gets electrocuted, right? So yeah, he's
always running. Yeah, I don't think he does find acceptance. I feel like it kind of functions like a weird time loop, and then like. When he says Dick Laurent, so I buy that Dick Laurent is mostly entirely well, he's only in the fantasy.
Yeah,
like we never see Dick Laurent.
We only hear about him.
Yeah, as just sort of a random guy who knows a bunch of people. Like that's all he is in reality. In this, he's like this hotshot rich guy, kind of a maniac mobster type caricature,
mobster snuff film porn producer.
Yeah, and so he kills him because in the fantasy, it's like, oh, he's the real bad guy, not me, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so he kills him, but that isn't part of facing what he actually did. That's just more of the fantasy. And so when he says Dick Laurent is dead, that feels more like a delusion. That feels more like don't worry, I took care of it kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how it reads anyway.
And especially if he's not like an actual person, right? He's still basically. Maybe it's him saying like the fantasy is dead. Like the story is dead. Um,
Yeah, but then he keeps running though.
yeah,
So I don't think the fantasy is dead. I don't know. To me, it feels a bit more like a Dick Laurent is dead. Like I took care of him, kind of thing. Like that's what he's telling himself he did, and then he's still on the run, but he can't ultimately run away. He tries to, but he can't. And then if this is kind of a weird loop, if we imagine it literally like time travel, like he's sort of looping back now, but
yeah,
like he gets snuffed out, and then the other guy keeps going. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's um.
Which it could
So
be because he does like to keep. He likes that sort of like weird sci-fi supernatural kind of thing. It's not all
yeah,
abstract symbolism
he
and everything.
definitely likes that. I don't think he's super committed to having those rules consistent and have them coherent and make sense, but he does like that sort of thing, that sort
Yeah.
of premise.
That's
Though
interesting.
I
Just
don't.
Travion, Lorentz transformation is how you determine the location of an object moving through space-time if you know the velocity. So clearly, this is a reference to Pullman leaving reality by having a non-rational velocity. Uh,
Well, it's definitely spelled differently, but
yeah,
it does sound the same.
yeah. I mean, it could be. I like. I think David Lynch himself compared this movie to a Mobius strip. So like an
Yeah,
infinite
because it
loop.
loops back on itself.
Yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, if we're thinking about the time travel literally and not metaphorically or like a fable or whatever, uh then it seems he thinks he did what he had to do and that he fixed it, but like he's still on the run. He hasn't owned up to anything. And then he gets snuffed out. And then the person who's kind of naive and in denial about his own capacity for evil and what he's going to do just kind of hears that and goes, "What?" And then
yeah,
keeps going on with his
yeah,
day. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, interesting. It's an interesting movie.
yeah. I
I
think it's a little messier. I think
It is
like
messier
the
for
thing
sure.
about like the thing that I like about Mulholland Drive, and we talked about, yeah, like there are messy bits to it, which I feel like those you can kind of tell are artifacts from the fact that it was supposed to be a TV show and kind of like go for a couple seasons, and so like there are little things where you kind of just have to be like, I mean, that doesn't really make sense in the context of everything else, but everything else kind of flows into this conclusion. So that we can kind of just like, yeah, that one you just have to do a little more stretching to make it work. For this
Oh,
one,
yeah, the private eye,
yeah,
that subplot doesn't really fit
yeah,
anymore since it became a movie instead of a TV show. Yeah, we talked about that.
yeah. This one has things where I'm just like, it, thematically by the end, I'm not sure what is happening, right? I don't know if the movie if the movie allows itself to have a conclusion, right? And if it does, it's a little sloppy. But it, as a concept, I think it's really interesting, and it's a lot of fun to kind of like take it as a puzzle and sort of work it over. And like, especially with
Mhm.
a second watch, it makes it very interesting to sort of like see
It's a
where,
very strong aesthetic experience, I
yeah,
would say, and there's enough of a story that, like, I don't find it boring, but um I do not think it really comes together quite as well
yeah,
as some of his better work. I think this one feels like there's a lot of loose ends or things that I'm like, okay, I know that this is about someone in denial of his own like
capacity for evil.
capacity for evil, who was like became so enraged and jealous because he thought had
Because of a
good
shitty woman.
yeah, that he ended up killing her, and then he creates this fantasy where he gets to be on the opposite end of her shitty behavior and like gets to be what he thought he couldn't be for her and fantasize about that, but ultimately it's a fantasy, so it can't sustain itself. It's unstable, and so he sort of loops, and he's given the opportunity to face objectively what he did on tape and not how he remembered it in his head, and he doesn't take that opportunity, and so he's stuck in this sort of like Buddhist or like purgatorial
Yeah,
cycle of suffering because he won't face up to what he did.
Yeah. The
And
karmic wheel. He's trapped, like reliving this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's enough in there to make you go like, yeah, that's definitely what's happening. But there are some other things that make you go like, okay, but what are we saying about that exactly? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
It feels
especially by the end, it feels like it doesn't really come to a conclusion for what we're saying about it. It's more just like
yeah.
it's more just
But
like a way of looking at the soul of of a murderer being like what the soul of a murderer would feel like, right? And how that would it's got that crime and punishment angle
sure,
to it,
sure.
but not quite as
You know, it's
it
if
doesn't
it's
draw a
if you
conclusion one way or the other. Like the end of Crime and Punishment when he has sort of redeemed himself and found, found a pathway to a better soul, right? This doesn't
yes.
really have that conclusion. There's
It feels a
nothing
bit
like that.
messier because, like, I mentioned The Lighthouse because it actually seems very similar to The Lighthouse in some way in some ways,
Yeah.
like, we talked about this when we talked about that movie, but, in that movie, he, like, is trying to escape from the murder he committed, in that logging incident, and he has this sort of, like, concocted sort of space where he's dealing with this other aspect of himself and he's like trying to hide what he does, but eventually he comes clean, but he doesn't do it in the right way. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
he's kind of I feel like that movie it's hard for me to remember all that we said about it, but like I feel like that movie had a bit more to say about these themes than this movie does. This
Yeah.
movie feels a bit more like we're raising questions, but not really saying all that much about them. You know what I mean? Not as bad as some movies. Like I think the quintessential bad example of this is something like Annihilation by Alex Garland.
Yes.
Very different themes, but people look at that movie and go like, "Oh, it has themes about like, self-destruction and, how change and annihilation and blah 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 all that sort of stuff." And it's like, "Okay, it's raising those questions, but what does it actually say about any of them?"
Yeah.
And no one can ever answer that question because the movie is like so incoherent that it can't actually say anything. That's an extreme example, but that's enough for some people. They look at that and they like, oh, this movie had themes of self destruction. It's like, yeah, what about self destruction though? Are we learning anything about what people are like and how to solve any of these problems? No, we're not. We're just sort of raising the question and calling it good enough. This movie is better than that, but it does feel like in the end, like, okay, I don't know that I learned anything. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Morally, psychologically, I don't feel like I learned anything. It's just like, yeah, that was an interesting experience, I guess.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I think that it's just like I like it still. It's just a little bit like it's not his best. It's an interesting concept that like, and I like that he took the swing, but he really kind of nailed that. He really kind of nailed this one in Mulholland Drive,
Yeah, it
and
does.
yeah,
I got the feeling numerous times watching this movie that this feels like the beta version of Mulholland
yeah,
Drive.
yeah,
It feels like, okay, this is the prototype, and it's like, okay, I could see what he was cooking, but this feels a little, underdone.
yeah,
Like we didn't give this enough time to simmer or to marinate.
exactly.
I
Yeah,
still like it. I still like it. I think it's, in the top half of his filmography
oh
that
for
I've
sure.
seen.
Yeah,
But did they ever
Have-
find the Lost Highway? What do you mean? It's right on screen.
yeah,
There it is. Duh.
yeah,
It was right there the whole time. Yeah,
yeah.
Lost Highway. It's this is an interesting stream because I don't really love either of these movies,
Yeah,
but I
I wouldn't
do.
say that like I love bits of both. Right? Like
Yes,
there are
absolutely.
really interesting and fascinating things at work in both of them. As a whole, they're middle of the pack for me on his stuff. They're not the bottom tier, but they're not quite, just not quite, they're not reaching the heights of your Twin Peaks or your first two seasons of Twin Peaks, I should say, and your Blue Velvets. And
isn't it fun that we have to specify that now?
Yeah, isn't that great? I mean, technically, a lot of people just say Twin Peaks and Twin Peaks: The Return as two separate things.
That I'm glad for that.
Yeah.
Actually, we don't have to say that like, oh, Twin Peaks, yeah, but only the first two seasons. People don't even usually call it season 3; they just call it The Return.
Yeah,
like it's its own separate, cleaved off thing, as it should be, because it's not very good. John Evans, FYI, Wick trashes you as a reviewer in Mahler's Discord. Same guy. Oh, I mean, first of all, who cares? Same guy who's too stubborn and immature to admit when he's wrong, like calling Superman 25 decent. Yeah, well, let's put it this way. If you think that Superman 2025 is a decent movie, I don't really care what you have to say about anything else.
You're also probably not gonna. If you think that's a decent movie, you're not gonna like us as reviewers. So that makes that makes sense. I'm seeing the logic. I'm seeing the connective tissue here.
If I'm thinking of the same person here, this is someone who likes to like comment on tweets I make, clearly disagreeing with what I'm saying, but never actually providing any arguments. So that tracks.
Yes. The Sinners stream. The Sinners stream, our most controversial take to date.
The Thing says the second season of Twin Peaks has its own highs and lows.
Yeah, that's
oh boy,
true. Oh boy, does it.
There's a big lull in the middle. There's a big low in the middle of that. But I think it starts strong and ends strong. So that's, if you're going to put the lows anywhere, put them in the middle, right?
Yeah. It's so long. Yeah, it's funny because I forgot how much longer the second season of Twin Peaks is compared to the first.
Yeah, because the second season is like a proper 22 episodes. The first one's only like 7 or 8, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How many is
it? It might be 10.
Season 1, Twin Peaks. 8 episodes.
8 episodes. Yeah. And then the next one is 22. And there are a lot of good ones, and then it really slows down in the middle. Nadine and her superpowers. Yeah.
Apparently this person was not happy with our Sinners review. It's like, that movie is lame and dumb, guys. You gotta get. I don't care how important you think it is.
I don't care how black the actors are, man. I don't care.
Yeah, man. That movie is so stupid on like a literal like plot level sort of thing. It's lame in terms of like so many missed opportunities for something that would be more interesting. The example that always comes to mind for that is like all the posters and iconography and promotional material for Sinners makes it seem like they're doing a duality thing between the two twins, but there's basically no difference between them. There's like they're on the opposite side of like one argument in the middle, but that's it. Like we're using so much like good twin, bad twin imagery, and that's just not what the movie is at all. There's so many things like that in the movie where it's like, you could have done something interesting here, but you didn't. And then there's the fact that the movie presents cultural assimilation as a devilish trick, demonic trick that black people shouldn't assimilate into American culture because that's evil. And that Christianity
blues is purely African musical style that has no influence.
There's so much crap in that movie that's just like, I think this is bad for culture. Actually, also the movie's just really stupid. So, sorry, I hate Sinners. That movie sucks. It's going to be nominated for Best Picture next year. So,
we
won't have to talk.
Who are we?
Since we already did.
Yeah, who are we? Just two guys on the internet reviewing movies.
I take The Return over season 2. Probably no, Topaz.
How could you? I don't know, Topaz. I don't know about that one, Chief.
No, I'm not going to allow that one, Topaz. I'm so sorry, but you can't say that.
Firewalk with you know what? In our Lynch reinvestigation here, we probably will discuss Firewalk with Me at some point. I'm curious to rewatch it. I've only seen it the one time. I didn't love it. A lot of that is like it comes across as very spiteful for just because he's very clearly jaded about getting canceled. But the thing is, the second half of like or the middle of your second season is kind of boring, man. Like
Yeah,
this is the
second.
90s. You can't just do you can't just do that.
Yeah, I think the highs of season 2 in the beginning and the end are so good. It's like some of the best stuff in Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
The problem with The Return for me is the ending
Yeah, I'm
because
not a
I
big
was
fan of that.
really this is why I have such a hate boner for Twin Peaks: The Return, because I was really enjoying it. And I had this, I'll never forget it. I was so naive. Chat, you have no idea how naive I was. I was watching Twin Peaks: The Return, and it was really crazy and all over the place. And I'm like, man, I can't wait to see how he ties this all together. That's what I thought when I was watching it, and I cannot believe how naive I was in hindsight. He doesn't tie it together at all. He just goes like, "Actually, maybe none of that happened. Goodbye." And I'll never forgive him for
Actually,
that.
maybe none of that happened, and maybe you've entered a multiverse and maybe time traveled too, and maybe yes. Bye. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
that's
it sucks. The ending fucking sucks, and it
yeah.
ruins the rest of it because I'll never watch it again. I never want to
Yeah,
watch The
I
Return
really
again
don't want
because
to.
I don't care how enjoyable in isolation some of Twin Peaks The Return is. Like there it's never made sense of or tied together in a satisfying ending. And I hate it.
I really cannot stand the like cuz it feels like such a fucking cop out by the end of it for
Oh, it's
me, right? Cuz
such a
like
cop
one
out.
of my favorite fucking characters from the original show was Audrey, right? I really
Mhm.
like Audrey Horne. Um you could be forgiven for like if you like I went into Twin Peaks the Return being like okay, can't wait to see cuz like that season 2 ends with a cliffhanger with her. I'm like can't wait to see what the result of that is. How are we going to do all this? There is so much that happened in like an off-screen kind of thing that Mark Frost had to justify in one of the books that they released, like
Mhm.
to sort of supplement it, and it's like none of that's in the show. It's a little bit like the Star Wars prequel problem, where it's like yeah, Darth Maul is a really interesting character when you take everything that's outside of the movies into account. But in the
Yeah.
movies, he just kind of looks cool and doesn't have much of a character at all.
Yeah.
So
He's not a
like
character. Yeah.
it's yeah, it's very very annoying to me. The thing also didn't Lynch leave in the middle of season 2 of Twin Peaks? Yeah, he was mad that they forced him to resolve the big who killed Laura Palmer thing, so he bailed for the middle part of the season. Kind of got
And that's
over
when
it.
it gets bad.
That's when it gets bad. Then he kind of got
Uh-huh.
over it, came back and put out some absolute bangers to end the series, but
Mhm.
it was too little too late because you can't just stop showing up to work.
Yeah. I totally get why he was so annoyed
Yeah.
because, who killed Laura Palmer is the driving narrative question of the show. When it's answered, the show is over narratively. And so he was forced to reveal it way earlier than he wanted to. And so he did, and that's a great episode, but then he was upset and he left. And then the show's like, "Oh fuck." So like the less competent writers on the team, not that they were terrible, but some of their work not good. They're in an unenviable position of having to figure out how we continue the story of Twin Peaks now that the central thematic and dramatic question is answered. So I don't envy them for that, but their answers were terrible. They were like, Nadine gets superpowers and throws some people around a gym, and a whole bunch of other random shit happens, and it wanders aimlessly for a while until eventually they're like, oh, what if Coop had like an old partner who turned evil and he's coming back? And I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
now we
now
have
we're cooking with
something
gas.
again. Now we have something again. And that gives us just enough narrative push to get towards the end of season 2, which has a number of really good episodes all in a row. And then it ends. And you're like, damn, but it ends really well. God, the end of season 2 is so good.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's the rant about Twin Peaks. Matthew Leach, thank you very much for the super chat. Says, what do you rate one battle after another out of 10? That's a tricky question for a couple reasons. One, I always struggle with out of 10 ratings. That's just a personal problem. So one battle after another. The main things I hate about it are like its morals. I think it's a rather technically well-made movie. I think the story is not one of Paul Thomas Anderson's strongest, but mostly what I take issue with is the entire sort of like moral framework of the movie, and that it, basically that it normalizes and endorses to a lesser degree left-wing terrorism, and I'm not a fan of left-wing terrorism. Not a big fan of that. So
or
hard
terrorism in general, but
in
mostly
terms
the
of
left-wing.
yeah, as if that needed clarification. Thank you, Hugh. I'm not a fan of any kind of terrorism. But no, I I okay. Personal enjoyment level out of 10, very low. We'll give it like a 3 or 4 we'll give it a 3 for personal enjoyment, because there's some great camera work, there's some great score, there's some great performances and some funny jokes. But mostly I hate the movie. Judging it objectively is a harder question that I don't know if I have a good answer for. Because I do think that it's technically well made, but I don't think it's an especially strong story, even if you do agree with its like rather radical political framework. So maybe objectively, in terms of everything, like a 6, just in terms of how well made it is. But it's only a 6 if you don't think that the essential moral message of the movie is evil. I am going to make a video on it, so hopefully it's a short, punchy video, so it doesn't turn into a giant, sprawling review of the entire thing. But that is in the works. I'm not going to make you watch the movie, so we won't be covering it on stream. Something like that. How's that for an answer? I give it a Paul. Why make this? You once made There Will Be Blood out of 10. Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a fair review. It's certainly a step down from some of his better work, that's for sure.
Yep. It stinked.
It did stink. I didn't enjoy it at all, really. So
yeah, Kyle
personally, I'll give it a 3.
Back to the Lynch thing, right? A lot of the cast was mad at him for abandoning the show. I can only imagine. I can. And then I was waiting until all of the return aired to watch it. Once I heard Audrey was barely in it, and what they did to her, I didn't bother and just read summaries. That's probably for the best. None of the information from those summaries really made it into the show, and that's saying a lot considering there are over 18 hours of runtime that he could have used. Audrey is maybe in like what fucking 10 minutes across that entire time.
It's not really, a lot. He was not lacking in time. He just didn't care about tying it all up in a set.
25 years. He brings them all out of, brings them all back for this, and then barely does anything with them and their character. And it's just kind of like, why? Like, I know Sherilyn Fenn kind of lost her mind on Twitter about him and like kind of had a meltdown, which was, unfortunate, because I don't think he was like a bad person in general. She seemed to be very upset. But like, I can understand being angry that, he called you up after 25 years and was just like, hey, you want to come do this thing? And then like you showed up and you did nothing. And then it was over.
Yeah, Lynch was very committed to the idea of making it not satisfying on purpose.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, I know you were doing that intentionally, but it fucking sucks to watch.
Yeah, like,
I'm sorry.
It's a little small of you, honestly.
To
come in here and like, I know you're still mad that they canceled Twin Peaks' original run. I get it. Mm-hmm. I understand the concept behind being like, what if I just made a ending to the show that isn't really an ending, because what do you do with a story that was on pause for 25 years? It's never going to be as satisfying as you thought it might in your head, right? You could try a little harder than that. I don't know. You got your show back. You could have been like, okay, well, what can I do that will be a satisfying ending? Not like, hey, maybe I should just make this unsatisfying for the hell of it, because that'll be funny, wouldn't it?
And so, yeah, when Mark Frost writes those dossiers trying to explain it, that is Mark Frost trying, like, as a what's the word for that? Like after the fact, he's like trying to make sense of it for people. It's like none of what, huh?
Posthumously.
Yeah, well, not posthumously, but
he's running damage control in a way, right?
Essentially, like, yeah. He's like what he wrote in those dossiers really has nothing to do with what Lynch did. He's after the fact trying to help Twin Peaks fans make sense of it. It's like, no, actually, this actually makes sense because here's more context that makes it better, and that's what he was trying to do essentially. And I suppose I applaud him for at least being interested in doing that, but I'm not really interested in him trying to rationalize it for me because I know that David Lynch doesn't care about any of that. He wanted to make it unsatisfying.
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, thanks, buddy.
Yeah. So
it's like it's like a post hoc rationalization.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Yes, we got it. Anyway, I'm sad that you guys didn't get to be on chat. Sorry,
on screen.
The chat did not get to be on stream this stream because you guys have had some great things to say in the chat. Hopefully you'll be on stream next time. I don't know why it didn't happen this time. We'll just put that up to the YouTube gods.
We'll pray. We'll make the proper sacrifices, and hopefully by next week, you guys will be on screen because we have a very special double feature planned.
Oh yes. Why don't we announce that? Go ahead, Hugh.
Well, next week we will be stepping back from Ogre's intellectual exercises of David Lynch films, and we will be watching The Mummy 1999 with Brendan Fraser and 2004's Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman, both directed by Stephen Sommers. You have not seen The Mummy yet, have you?
No, I have not seen The Mummy, but I'm very excited for it.
I love both of these movies. I am so excited.
Yeah, so The Mummy and Van Helsing next time. So if this was a little bit too surreal and abstract for you, don't worry.
Yeah, but next week, no surrealism and abstraction whatsoever. It's all guns and vampires and kicking ass.
Hell yeah. I'm really excited. I have not seen Van Helsing for a long time, but I have very, very, very fond memories of that movie. So I'm very excited for that. Moral of the story, canceled shows should stay dead. Yes, I agree with that. He should. There was no need to bring Twin Peaks back. Could have just stopped.
You could have just
not the Universal Mummy. No,
well, I mean, technically, it is a Universal movie.
Well, true.
But we're not going to watch the Boris Karloff one because I've watched that and it's really boring. It just not a very good one of those classic movies. I would say.
The Invisible Man and what was the other one that was really good?
Bride of Frankenstein.
I think it was Frankenstein that we really. Oh, Wolfman. That's the one. I really liked.
Wolfman. Yeah. Invisible Man and Wolfman. Those were the two big ones.
Yeah, those are the ones I really especially liked. Yeah, so that'll be exciting. We'll talk about that next Sunday. Hugh, I think I think the answer is no. But do you have anything else you want to say about Eraserhead and Lost Highway?
No. I'm not going to elaborate on that.
Well, all right. I don't have anything else to say about that either. I've gotten out my grievances with what David Lynch did with the ending of Twin Peaks: The Return, and so I think that kind of sums up my sort of love-hate relationship with some of his work. I really like him as a man and as an artist. I'm glad he existed and made a whole bunch of really cool stuff. Some of it really sucks, but a lot of it's really good. I think there's probably more good than bad. So I'm happy he got to make some cool stuff. And I'm one step closer to having seen all of his movies now.
Yeah,
I'm really excited for The Elephant Man. We'll have to talk about that sometime.
Yeah, I'd like to. Maybe when Dune Messiah comes out, we can watch David Lynch's Dune.
Maybe we can. All right, that's all I got. Thanks, chat. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hopefully, you'll be on stream next time. And goodbye.